inserting a commercial, which we've both forgotten to mention over the last couple of days. One of you would have asked about a handbook for this entire session. And just briefly to explain to you that the handbook that I'm referring to is something that began at the Stone Engineers workshop in Sarasota, which was the first of the roundtable, or the beginning of the roundtable teachings, motor mechanics and so on. It escalated and extended hugely in Kauai, and it's been further extended and escalated again here. We're now looking at what's going to become the Arthurian Temple Official Handbook, Masters Level 1, Signet Council Member Roundtable Guide. It's about 230-40 pages. It's huge. Okay, so far. We're committed to shipping the first copies to people by August 15th, just 10 days after we get back to the States. And we should be able to do that easily. There is a pad at the back that Marianne is sitting next to. If anybody would like to order it and pay for it now, we'll take those back with us to the States and we'll ship them within the first 10 days of getting back there. Okay? Right. 45 US dollars, 35 GBP, including shipping, which is expensive, or 30 Irish. Okay.
And then Stephen, it costs, because it's big, it's probably it's bigger than the Arthurian. So, we always try to keep the price as low as possible. And, shipping tends to add, quite a bit to it, especially over here, but we are trying to exploit it for money. I wanted to have these for you, but there's no way we would have done more half our 40% of it given to you first name. It has all the graphs and a whole lot more. It has, even if you haven't taken the garden, there's some of that, and then there's all this other stuff.
Probably did. Yeah, he did. I get lots of things the wrong way around, including me. Okay, let's go. This is the long session, guys. Okay, so I will read this descriptive section as slowly as best I can. Involves some quite complex language and concepts that you probably haven't heard before. Try and pay attention to your breathing and just slow it as we go through the introduction. Okay, there are 5 full sessions of visualization and focus that follow. It's beautiful as well. Okay. The Emerald Awakening Master's Kundalini activation is one of 2 interharmonic energetic activations of previously dormant frequency within the body that sets in motion simultaneous activation of the 12 magnetic base tones within the fire codes between the 12 strands of the silicate matrix DNA template. Activation of the 12 fire code base tones begins activation of the 3 primal creation frequencies, the Q-Rache within the 4 scalar shields of the personal inner template complex. Activation of the 12 DNA fire codes allow for progressive natural fusion of each dimensional DNA strand template to occur, through which the organic potentials of cellular transmutation are reawakened within the physical body form. Through the natural processes of cellular transmutation, once fully operational within human genetic design, the carbon-based elemental biology of density 1 molecular structure is progressively and systematically transmuted to silica-based biology. Transmutation to silica-based biology allows the physical body to pass through the levels of semi-etheric, etheric, and pre-matter hydroplasmic liquid silica densities of harmonics 2, 3, and 4, which correspond to dimensions 4 through 12, through which the consciousness continually enters manifestation to achieve physical mastery of the organic process of transmutational dimensional ascension. To accomplish mastery of the ascension process, the signet star crystal seals within the scalar shields, which keep the 12 dimensionalized frequency levels of the consciousness and molecular form phase locked into dimensional division or polarization, must be released. Release of the signet star crystal seals allow the frequency spectra of the higher dimensional anatomy and the primal creation currents of the Q-Rache to enter into the template for the physical body and dormant DNA fire code templates, to begin progressively building the Merkaba vehicle and setting the cellular transmutation process in motion. The process of progressive transmutational dimensional ascension represents the function of the organic genetic design and evolutionary objective of the human creation blueprint, through which the natural, immortal Christos angelic form of the human being is actualized. In the evolutionary cycles of contemporary humanity, actualization of the 12-strand DNA potential takes place slowly in earthly terms, as the incarnate identity experiences in single lifetime vectors several cycles of density 1 incarnation, spanning many thousands of years, in order to progressively activate the DNA fire codes within the manifestation template. When the human genome was operating in its organic form, this process took place in one lifetime, over a period of approximately 44 years, as the immortal human incarnate matured to embody the 12 dimensions of consciousness within its original Christos manifestation template, the Maharic shield, actualizing its organic angelic human heritage and mastery over 4 densities of manifestation within the time matrix. The Emerald Awakening Master's Kundalini activation releases the density 2 4th-dimensional green signet star crystal seal and the density 1 1st-dimensional red signet star crystal seal to open the density 1 Nada Hoover body and the Telluric shield, and density 2 Alpha Hoover body and the Doradic shield to receive the omnipolar frequencies of the 12th dimensional Maharic current, otherwise referred to as the hydroplasmic beam, which arises from the pre-matter Christos template Maharic shield. Upon entering the Telluric and Doradic shields, the 12th dimensional frequencies of the Maharic current trigger simultaneous activation of the base tones within the 12 fire codes of the DNA template, beginning the process of depolarization of the 12 strands and levels of consciousness within the human manifestation template. Progressive depolarization of the 12 levels of consciousness within the human manifestation template sets in motion the organic process of cellular transmutation and potential mastery over transmutational dimensional ascension. The Emerald Awakening Master's Kundalini activation initiates regenesis of the original function of the human genome, releasing the base tones of the 3 key Rache currents within the body by the opening of the 2 signet seals, through which the physical body begins the carbon to silica transmutation process and is prepared to receive the higher dimensional overtone frequencies of the key Rache to complete cellular transmutation via fusion and depolarization of the particle, that's particum, and the antiparticle, part K, aspects of the manifestation template. This is the natural process of unified field physics by which a human being becomes Christed. The final step in fulfilling the potentials of original angelic human design concerns the activation of the overtone frequencies of the key Rache, which allows fusion between DNA strand templates to complete on 12 dimensions of frequency. The final step in transmutational dimensional ascension is referred to as the Amethyst Awakening Master's Kundalini activation. Through the Amethyst Awakening, the density 3 7th dimensional violet signet star crystal seal and the 8th dimensional gold signet star crystal seal and the density 4 11th dimensional dark silver signet star crystal seal are all released within the body's scalar shields. Release of the overtone signet seals allows the overtones of the key Rache creation currents to fuse with the base tones, bringing the 3 omnipolar creation currents, which are the primal creation currents built upon a trinity of tones, bipolar, plus non-polar energy units. It brings them together as one primal non-polar current, the Kunda ray, which is also referred to as the rainbow bridge, or the rainbow serpent. The Kunda ray is a pre-luminal vibration standing wave of internal sound emitted from one source, God, that corresponds to the combined original source current from which the three Kirache primal light force currents are the three non-dimensionalized levels of the energy matrix, which lie beyond the 15-dimensional time matrix, to emerge. The Emerald Awakening Master's Kundalini activation and its resulting activation of the base tones of the Kirache within the human body is the first step in manually expediting the natural process of transmutational dimensional ascension. Now, before we can proceed with the Emerald Awakening Kundalini activation, we'll take it that our Maharic shield are fully activated, but following that, the car must be brought out of dormancy within the human manifestation template. Once the 12-dimensional Maharic current is released within the embodied Kathara grid, the car can be activated, so you're ready for that this morning. The car refers to the four Huber bodies, which correspond to dimensions 1 through 12. The car becomes activated through removal of 4 inorganic crystal steel implants that block the natural function of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th DNA strand templates. And following the procedure for awakening the car, the Emerald Awakening Kundalini activation can be conducted, which will then be followed by the Amethyst Awakening. So, bring your attention please to your breath. And I'd like to ask you to spend a few moments just slowing your breath. If you can halve the rate, be gentle. Now take several deep breaths while visualizing or imagining a violet dot on the center of the inside of your forehead, the inside of your head, center opposite your third eye. Make a color image as strong as you possibly can. And if you can't perceive any colors, don't worry. Just imagine the violet dot is there. A couple more deep breaths while you get focused on this. And become aware of the violet dot sitting at the very center of your brain, which is the place we refer to as the pineal gland. And then I want you to move this violet dot upward into the 7th chakra, the crown chakra. Move it through the chakra, and as it were, out the top of your head, so it's sitting on the top of your skull. Now call to mind the Hierophant symbol, the pale silver Star of David. Bring your attention to the position 12 inches below your feet and imagine the Hierophant spinning there within your Maharic shield. Now inhale and slowly draw the pale silver Star of David up through the central body current, all the way up to meet the violet dot which is sitting at the top of the head where you left it. When the Hierophant connects with the violet dot, visualize the violet dot bursting into a 4-inch vertical pillar of violet silver light. And imagine the violet silver pillar running down through the body and into the Earth's core, as well as all the way upwards into the 14th chakra, positioned 36 inches above your head. This element activates the violet ray of transmutation. Now, move your attention to the heart chakra. And there imagine a small green spherical crystal, the green star, sitting there at the very core of your heart chakra. This is the green star crystal seal that controls release of 4th dimensional frequency, phase 1 direct current into the body. Now inhale, drawing violet silver energy from the violet silver pillar all around you into the green star of the heart center. And as you exhale, expand the violet silver energy into the green star sphere at the heart center. And repeat this twice more. violet silver energy from the violet silver pillar into the green star at your heart center. And as you breathe out, expand the violet silver energy into the green star sphere. Now on the final exhale, so you can synchronize your breathing with what I'm telling you, imagine the green star popping. So you're going to do one more inhale and then exhale and do this. Imagine the green star popping, turning into a spinning green and violet starburst of light as the violet silver pillar disappears. Spin the green violet starburst faster until it becomes a ball of green violet light about the size of the grapefruit, spinning in the middle of your heart chakra and all around the grid. This green violet ball is the storehouse for your phase 1 dramatic current, and it's called the dramatic sphere. And to complete the activation of the dramatic phase 1 current, I want you now to inhale and draw pale silver energy from your Maharic shield through the central body current and into the center of the dramatic sphere at the heart center, encasing the entire sphere in pale silver light. Hold your attention at the heart center, on the sphere that you've just encased in silver light. Draw pale silver energy up from the earth core to fill and expand the dramatic sphere. Do this very slowly and deliberately and repeat it 2 or 3 times. Now just for a moment, I want you to hold your hands in front of you with your fingertips a half an inch or an inch apart. Just pull your fingertips apart, and I want you to feel the fuzziness of the energy that's flowing through your system now. That's all right, that's fine. Just go ahead. You need to shuffle a little further forward in your seats now, because I want you to take your fingertips around the back of you and touch them on your tailbone. And when you feel ready and comfortable, I want you to pull deeply pale silver energy from your Maharic shield into the dramatic sphere. And on the out breath, push pale silver energy down to the fingertips and into the tailbone. And I want you to repeat this 2 or 3 times before removing your fingers and resuming a relaxed sitting position. Resume your comfortable sitting position and bring your attention to your second chakra, the navel. And again, if you can't visualize too readily, just feel or simply know that there in the navel is a double terminated quartz crystal, a few inches in overall length if you can see it. And it's beginning to push out the front of your second chakra, the sacral. Now I want you to focus focus your attention on this crystal. It's wanting to leave you now. It's pushing. If you're moved to bring your hands into your navel area and energetically assist this crystal to leave your body. Just drive forward and out. And know that there are plenty of helping hands around. At least one of each of you that will complete the process. This will be completed for you regardless of where you feel you're at right now. So we'll move on to the solar plexus chakra, in which there is a similar but smaller double-terminated crystal there. This one will release on its own now because the currents have been activated to do so. But if you want to, you can move your fingertips up to the solar plexus area and hold it down with your fingers again. This won't take long. This will be very, very quick now. And with that done, you can move your attention back to the heart chakra. Imagining a little sphere of energy, colored green, right at the center. Spend a moment, not long, to bring this little green sphere more fully into focus. Crisp image if you can make it. But regardless, there is a little black cube of energy there, right at the center of it, which you might notice. And if you look more closely once more, you'll notice that inside of the little black cube is a smaller white cube. As you focus on the two little cubes, watch them as they merge together. And likely as not, you'll feel a ripple of vibration as they do, and then notice a little puff of smoke as they both suddenly disappear. At this point, you have awakened the cry, and your bodies are now activated to open the fourth and first crystal seals, which means you're ready for a downward awakening. And so we will proceed to open the green star crystal seal. So keeping your awareness on your heart center, and resume your awareness of the Doradic sphere, the green, violet, silver ball there in the heart center. And inhale deeply. And on the out-breath, visualize or imagine pushing a cord of green, violet, silver Doradic current down into the tailbone. All the way down the central vertical current to the first cell in the very tip of the tailbone. And once you've done it, just breathe easy for a moment or two. Take your attention as best as you can to the first cell and visualize it there. And what you will see is a white silver sphere, a tiny white silver sphere, right at the tip of your tailbone where the first cell resides. And within this white silver sphere, you will notice or intend that there is a green sphere. And inside of the green sphere, visualize or intend a red sphere inside of the green one. So you're seeing a white silver sphere with a green sphere inside of that, with a red sphere inside of that. They will remain as you leave them. Bring your attention back to the sphere of green, violet, silver energy in your heart center. Breathe easily, but on the next out-breath, visualize or imagine sending a cord of green, violet, silver energy all the way down your central vertical current and into the green sphere in the first cell at the tip of the tailbone. So exhale quite strongly as you do this. And on the exhale, inhale, immediately pull pale silver light from your personal Maharic shield, 12 inches below your feet, up into the tailbone and into the green sphere. As you do this, imagine the green sphere popping into a starburst of pale green silver light. This opens your Kundalini seal. Now we'll address our attention to the red crystal seal which remains. So return your awareness to the Druidic sphere at the heart center. Inhale deeply. And then on the exhale, once more, push the cord for green, violet, silver current down to the first upper tip of the tailbone. On the inhale, draw pale silver energy up from your personal Maharic shield 12 inches below your feet, up into the tailbone, and into the red sphere inside the white silver one. As you do this, the red sphere will pop into a starburst of pale pink silver light. And for the next few breaths, breathe out pale pink silver light into the 12th chakra position, 6 inches below your feet. So just take a few seconds to do that. On the out breath, breathe out. Imagine breathing out pale pink silver light into the 12th chakra, 6 inches below your feet. Now you have opened the Ki-Rashe seal, so that the sacred flames of the Ki-Rashe can be activated. Now, if you were to see the Ki-Rashe, it would appear as 3 little flames, which exist in the 12th chakra, 6 inches below your feet. These 3 little flames are each pale blue, pale yellow, and pale violet. Now I want you to begin by focusing as clearly as you can, or imagining with strong intention, that there, at the 12th chakra, 6 inches below your feet, are the 3 little flames. So just take a few seconds to bring these flames into your conscious presence, pale blue, pale yellow, and pale violet. Now what we're going to do is we're going to draw each of these flames one by one from their position 12 inches below your feet, all the way through your central vertical current, all the way up through it, out the top of your head, into the 10th chakra, 6 inches above your crown chakra. So on the next inhale, draw the pale violet flame from its position in the 12th chakra, all the way up through the central vertical column, all the way up and out through the top of your head, into the 10th chakra, 6 inches above your head. Just breathe easy between each inhale. Bring your attention back to the 12th chakra below your feet. Allow yourself just a little time to connect with the pale yellow gold flame there. Breathe easy as you do this. And when you're ready, inhale quite strongly, draw it all the way up to the central vertical current, out to the top of the head, and anchor it in the 10th chakra, 6 inches above your head. Breathe easy. And when you're ready, bring your attention back to the position below your feet. Take a few seconds to make a good connection with the pale blue flame. This flame is known as the inner arc of the covenant. And when you're ready, inhale strongly and draw the pale blue flame, as you did the others, all the way up the central vertical current, all the way up through your system. visualization, and I want you now to focus on the three little flames all reunited in the 10th chakra, position above your head. Just have them be there if you can't see them. And in a second we'll create the Kira-shaped sphere. So on the next inhale, not quite yet, on the next inhale, draw pale silver energy from your personal Maharic shield 12 inches below your feet, all the way up your central vertical current and into the 10th chakra. So on the inhale, draw pale silver energy up. On the exhale, gently. And then with a strong inhale, draw more pale silver energy up into the 10th chakra. And then visualize or imagine the three little flames enclosed within a sphere of pale silver light. Then resume relaxed breathing. Now the next step is on the exhale. On the next exhale, when I told you what to do, move the Kira-shaped sphere all the way down through the central vertical column, out through the 12th chakra, 6 inches below your feet, and all the way down to the 13th chakra, vertical. So on the next exhale, move that pale silver sphere containing the three flames all the way down your central column, right down into the vertical. And listen for the sound tones with your inner ear as the Kira-shape enters the vertical. These tones represent the Amenti passkey, which opens your personal gruel point, the first cell in the tailbone, which releases the Kira-shaped flames into your auric field. Just breathe easy. You may see that the Kira-shaped flames rise up through your Maharic pillar, emerging through your first cell, passing like radiating waves, one after the other, of pale blue, pale yellow, and pale violet. Whether you see them or not, the waves of color will be moving through you right now. And whilst they do this, I would like you to bring your attention to each of the first 4 chakras, the base, the sacral, the solar plexus, and the heart. And one by one, whilst the pale blue, the pale yellow, and the pale violet radiates through you, I want you to visualize or imagine each chakra emanating a silver Maharic sheath, an oval-shaped pod, completely surrounding, totally embracing each one. Move through each of the 4. Take a few minutes with each one, but not too long. Stage, you've completed the Emerald Awakening. Before we finish, we must first establish the link, the bridge, if you will, to the Amethyst Awakening, the process of activation, sheathing of the higher chakras. So now we'll work with 8th and 11th dimensional energies to open Duralic phase 2 and 3 currents, and activate the Tuaric phase 2 current, which is called activating the Ra center in the thyroid, or otherwise anchoring the rainbow bridge. So now I want you to bring your attention to the area of your third eye and focus on a point just inside your forehead, a little above and behind your eyebrows. Up through the crown chakra until the dark silver dot sits on top of your head. On the next inhale, just listen to what I'm telling you first. Pull pale silver energy up from your personal Maharic shield 12 inches below your feet, all the way up the central current, into the dark silver dot on the top of your head. On the next inhale, pull pale silver energy up to meet the dark silver dot. And as these meet, the silver dot pops in a silver starburst. On the next following exhale, push the silver starburst down the central channel, all the way to the tip of the tailbone. As it reaches the tailbone, imagine or intend or see it expanding as a large silver starburst, fully filling the first cell. And then breathe easily and watch as gold-silver current begins to emerge from the tailbone and begins to flow up the central column, completely infusing each chakra center with gold-silver frequency. It will move up through your body far more quickly than you probably visualize. But it's good for you to follow the stages and imagine the frequency running through each chakra center, but be reasonably quick in following through your body. As you come up to the 7th chakra, you notice that the gold-silver current is continuing upward out the top of your head, is moving up through the 10th chakra 6 inches above your head, and continues moving upward still to the 11th chakra 18 inches above your head, and continues like a huge gold-silver fountain until fully embracing the 14th chakra 36 inches above your head. As it reaches that point, you notice the gold-silver current then begins to flow in the reverse direction, still filling each chakra center, but flowing back towards the first. And this action creates a gold-silver sheath, completely surrounding and embracing your central vertical channel. And now you can bring your attention to the 2nd chakra. And here we're going to create a gold-silver ball in the seed seal at the center of this chakra. In order to do this, imagine the chakra as a bow tie shape. The seed seal is the narrow bit in the middle, where the two triangles of the dicky bow shape meet. The gold-silver ball is called a Turex sphere. So on the next inhale, draw gold-silver current from the gold-silver sheath through you and around you into the center of the 2nd chakra. And as you breathe out, create and expand the ball to surround the bow tie shape. On the next inhale, move the gold-silver ball you created up to the first Hara center, which is 2 inches just below your navel. This is the 9th silver star signet seal. And exhale gently, allowing the ball to expand in that position 2 inches below the navel. On the next inhale, move the gold-silver ball up to the solar plexus and breathe out gently once more. And on the next in-breath, move the gold-silver ball up to the heart center. Again, breathing out gently. But this time on the next inhale, draw more gold-silver current into the ball. Fill it as full as you can, and on the exhale, breathe out, forcefully pushing cords of gold-silver current down each arm and into the palms. And bring your fingertips together, just a short distance apart, and feel the fuzziness, the buzz of the Turex phase 3 current that you've now created within yourself. Now you're able to run current from dimensions 4, 5, 6, 7, transmit to the thyroid gland and to activate and anchor the rainbow bridge not only in yourself, but also in others. And this is the final stage as we proceed to complete with the amethyst awakening. Now this element works to bring a burst of the kundalini, the acatic blue frequency that sets the amethyst awakening in motion. So bring your attention to the center of your brain, inside your pineal gland, the very center of your skull. Imagine that you see there a pale violet spark of light. This violet spark of light is the bottom of the seal of your seventh crown chakra. Now I want you to imagine that you're going to move this pale violet spark of light straight up into your 10th chakra, 6 inches above your head. The 10th chakra, as a point of focus, is like a disc of light, blue-black sapphire. So, on the next inhale, move the pale violet spark of light up into the 10th chakra, which you will see as blue-black sapphire, 6 inches above your head. And as you do this disc of blue-black will take on a violet hue. Try to feel it there as a small horizontal disc. On the next inhale, don't do it yet, you will move this disc of violet sapphire light up to the 24-point silver star of the 14th chakra. So inhale, move this disc of violet sapphire light up to the 24-point silver star of the 14th chakra. And on the exhale, move it down to the 10th chakra, 6 inches above your head, down to the crown, down the central vertical current, down through your personal Maharaj shield, all the way to the earth's core. You may notice as you do this, a whole series of violet blue sparks flying all over the place from the planetary Maharaj shield, as if they were alive, as if electrical communication is taking place. Now this is happening. You may notice also that energy flowing up your Maharaj pillar from the earth core reflects this change as violet blue energy flows slowly up towards you. As this energy begins to reach your personal Maharaj shield, you may notice the energy behaving in a similar way, throwing out showers of sparks, violet blue sparks in all directions, all communicating with each other about the mathematical instructions, about what to do with your body, about what to do about your crystal seals, about how to activate your chakras. Now, bring your attention to the pale silver skin, the sheath that surrounds you, and your etheric body. And be aware too of the main central current that you brought the pale silver cord through. On each inhale, bring up the pale silver violet sapphire energy, simultaneously from your Maharaj shield, infusing the pale silver sheath, which embraces your etheric body and permeates your entire being. Just take a few breaths to do this and watch, if you can, as the three primary colors involved here flicker through you. And when, as they will reach the heart chakra, feel them expand out and allow them to travel on up all the way to the 14th chakra, expanding throughout every chakra as the pale silver violet sapphire energy flows up, through, and all around you. You will feel or see each chakra respond with a spiraling burst of silver violet sapphire, backwards and forwards, working through both sides of the chakras, until they all shift. And allow, if you can, yourself to feel the process as it awakens every cell in your body. The fire letters will activate now. Setting the grid frequencies necessary to activate the fire code 7, 10, and 12 in the DNA template. Your crystal self will continue the process of counter-activation as the amethyst awakening will progressively unfold in your DNA template.
There you go. Thank goodness we don't have to do that every morning. Everybody feel, does anybody not feel some current running? Okay. We'll get there. All right, I noticed that, unfortunately, I have a bouncer at the door, but it appears people are trying to take this road because I guess we're supposed to be out by 1. All right, I was told to keep going, our program is still free. So I guess we're going to have to go out of the room and run this, if you help us find a place outside or something, it's okay for this many people to sit and do stuff. I would appreciate it. Because
all right. Now, since we don't have a lot of time to cover things, I'm probably going to go in reverse sequence to what I was going to do when we first came in, which was start one place and end up what the information we needed to know to understand what the rest of this project is about that we're involved in. We've done a round table, and there's a picture of a round table, I believe, in your field guide. Can somebody find what page is that? Can you find in the field guide what page is that, please? I forget. I don't have the field guide with me here. Somewhere I have the other book, though. It's in the car. Okay. Yeah, the red book is the field guide. Okay. There's a page that has the round table, a diagram of the round table, which is a diagram of the divine blueprint. Okay, yeah, you've got it there. Can I borrow your book for 2 seconds? All right. Now, okay. It's on page 12. Now this is the configuration that we were doing last night, but it was kind of turned a little bit because it wouldn't fit in the room. That's on page 12 in your field guides, in your red books. That is the positioning. It's called the master stand for a round table. There's a reason why people's bodies are put in a place. If you consider that you're an electromagnetic conduit of energy and you create specific relationships, geometrical relationships between, between electrical conduits of energy, and you can amplify that energy by having those geometrical relationships. So in the old days, in the ancient days, there were very complex types of stands. They were all built on the master stand, but at times you would have thousands and thousands of people participating in them, which was really wild to watch, especially from a spaceship. No, from above. Well, this you have with you, so if any of you want to do rounds, you can do this, all right? The information and how-to is in this book. That's why you were given a field guide. There's a lot in here that we never have time to cover anyway in this particular workshop, and I knew that. But you don't need me to teach you as long as you know how to read, all right? There's information in here that will help you. It's the techniques. This is the technique book that will help you to be able to work with the planetary grids. It will give you enough information that you will be able to do rounds if you want to. You will be able to do salutations, the ones that help to get your own Merkaba spinning in the right direction. They're in here. There are techniques on forming teams, typographical scanning teams. They are in here. So there's a whole bunch of different techniques that you have to go home with, that you don't have to just kind of take this workshop and then what. This is the beginning of the book. Now the big book, which I had no idea, it's going to be like 250 pages by the time it's done. The things that I'm going to pass around from my book are just excerpts from this. The whole manuscript is huge. And I'm going to show you the most important things that pertain to the information that we've been going through in this particular workshop. So, anyway, the master stands on page 12 will be a key. I wanted you to see that and look at that for a minute, because that is what we were doing. That's what the hoops were about, to help people find the places and those kind of things. For the people, which is most of us, who are going up to I, we're going to be doing one of those there, and we're going to be adding the extra thing where each of those positions, there are 12 positions here, each one is going to be given one of the 12 tribe names. So instead of just using 2 tribe names, you're going to be given one of the 12. And we have the book so we can go over, well, how do you say that? You know, we'll get that, okay? Yes?
I've written each of the tribal names on a piece of paper so they don't have to hold the whole book because we're spinning with the book.
Oh, okay.
The names on a piece of paper that one of the 3
Okay.
hold.
You just need to remember it once. One person in your group can remember it, and then they can say it to you, and then you can sing it, you know. So it's really not hard once you get going in a group, because the group, you know, supports itself. Here you go. Thank you. Now, oh, sorry. They're yours, too. Okay. All right. Now, let's see. What I wanted to do when I first came in was start with just covering really, and I'm going to cover this really quickly. On this page I believe is also in the Cathara manual, I think in Cathara 2. All right, I believe you have this. It has a different page number there, but it's also in the Templar book. This shows you a couple of things. It shows you the Merkaba vehicle, or how the Merkaba vehicle is built. Now, we worked with Merkaba last night and adjusting its spins and using tones to activate things in the DNA to get the Merkaba energies flowing. But this explains a little bit, this chart explains a little bit about the connection between DNA strands. When you see this diagram here, that's the diagram we use to show the 12-strand DNA template. There's 12 little strands sticking out. Now, each one of these goes in a set of 3. So you have strand 1, 2, and 3. That goes with the Nada Merkaba that we talked about, the Nada Huva body and the Nethra Merkaba, which is the density 1 part of the Merkaba field. So each set of 3 of these goes with one part of the Merkaba when you're dealing with the 4 densities of the Merkaba. If you can look at the charts that are in your books, the ones you do have, there's enough information there that if you really want to know, you can understand the connections very easily between DNA strands. You activate these, it brings this part of the Merkaba energies into life, into the shields, and into the fields around you. All right, there's phases of building Merkaba. The first phase is called Nethra phase, and we all have some degree of Nethra phase activated. That's the Merkaba that connects us. It's the strand 1, 2, 3 activation that connects us to the planetary grids, and through which we get density 1 energy circulating through our body. That is the one that's reversed right now. That's the one that, you know, it's that one and the top one, but it's specifically the Nethra Merkaba that's reversed because it's following the planetary Nethra Merkaba, which is reversed. What that has done in the human form has reversed the top one as well. So when we do the salutations exercises, what we're doing is manually resetting the proper spin rate into our Merkaba, and what that allows is the strands here to activate properly. Because what's happening now with the Nethra Merkaba running in reverse, when it's running in the reverse sequence, there are fire letters in each strand. There are 12 fire letters, or kilans, which are basically units of composite scalar wave units that form the template itself for the DNA strand. Now, one strand of chemical DNA will manifest on top of one DNA template. What that means is when you look at a strand of DNA, as science looks at it, it is a double helix. That is not 2 strands, that is 1 strand. It's electrical and magnetic, 1 electrical heli, 1 magnetic heli, that manifest on the electrical and magnetic chelons in the DNA strand template. As we activate DNA strands, we'll always have those 2 visible heli, but the coding within them and what they call nucleotide base pairs, which are the little ladders that go across in how chemical DNA is structured, they will increase. There will be more units of chemicals and information in them as more of the strands activate. Now, if you have your Nethra Merkaba going in reverse, all of the little scalar wave patterns, the chelons, the fire letters in each strand, 1, 2, and 3, are running in reverse order. That means they're passing energy on in a reverse order, and it's blocking in between the strands rather than flowing naturally. So it allows some energy to get into the body, but most of the energy that's supposed to get into the body doesn't get into the body. It also means you aren't able to bring in the frequencies from the next set of strands that would correspond to your soul level of identity in density 2 with dimensions 4, 5, and 6. Strands 4, 5, and 6, if you activate all of those, bring those frequencies into the body, you're what's considered a soul integrated being, and all the way up. 4, 5, 6 is soul integration, 7, 8, 9 is over soul integration, 10, 11, 12 is avatar or Christos integration. Now, if you want to be able to bring those dimensions of consciousness back into your perception while you're in a body, you need to follow the physics that govern it. And the physics that govern it are frequency from here, from these higher dimensions, must be able to come down in and anchor into the body. If the fire letters in the DNA strands are running in reverse, they are not allowing the frequencies to come in from the higher strands. which means they're going to be dormant down here in your body, which means the only consciousness you're going to be able to focus in this body is dimensions 1, 2, and 3, which is what our race has been stuck in since 25,500 BC, when our Nether Merkabas were reversed. So it's worth using the salutations exercises in your field guide just as an individual. You can use them in groups, but you don't have to. If you do them once, like once a day or even once a week, you're going to be helping to reset, at least temporarily, the natural pattern, which is going to allow the fire letters in the DNA strands to begin to straighten themselves out. Now, the more you use it, I mean, you don't have to, spend like half of your day. It's not one of those. But if you use it even a couple of times a week, it's going to progressively build up what's called a critical mass, where if you put enough energy into one pattern in the body or in the energy fields, eventually it will have more energy than the old pattern had, and you'll be able to override it, and it'll become normal, and it'll stay. Now, right now, the planetary grids, which have a lot more frequency than any one individual's Merkaba or any one individual's body, they're going to override what you set, but you can temporarily set it. You're just going to have to reset it. That's why it's something that you need to do a couple times a week. I suggest 3 times a week. You don't have to wipe yourself out with this stuff, and it doesn't have to take 3 hours. They don't take very long to do the salutations. The salutations are in the field guides. Does anybody have the page of those? I don't have mine out with it. Let me see. You're closest, so I'll bother you. Salutations should be before this. Field technique. All right, it's after this and before that.
10, 11, 12.
Yeah. 8, 9. Yeah, creating a series. Yeah, that's it. On page 10 and 11 in your field guides, the 11 gives you the Omeda song. Again, you have that in your Kathara too. But on page 10, that gives you the basic technique to use for running a salutation, which means getting your Merkaba spinning in the right direction. All right? I would suggest using this. This will help this process of these strands clearing up so you can pull in the natural frequencies of strands 4, 5, and 6. These strands want to activate now because the planetary grids are activating. And they will activate, but when the frequency comes down, it's going to reverse and get disharmonic, which can make it very difficult. You can have all sorts of strange experiences. When your higher strands activate, they're sending information down in electrical form, but what it's receiving into is distorted. So you're going to get distorted frequency coming in. It can give you all sorts of distorted perceptions, psychic perceptions. It's not going to be something that's going to terrorize you when strand 4 starts activating. It's pretty subtle. But if you begin to work with the Merkaba techniques that will assist in rapidly clearing the first 3 strands, what you're also doing is clearing the first 3 chakras in the body, the base chakra, the sacral chakra, and the solar plexus chakra on your body. That will allow the energy that's going to be coming from your higher frequency consciousness, from dimensions 4, 5, and 6, chakras 4, 5, and 6. It will allow that to start grounding into the body and then running down through chakra 12 and 13 into the earth's core. It'll get your circuits opened. So it's worth, even if you don't ever want to do planetary grid work, it's worth, if you want to heal and you want to expand your consciousness and you want to anchor your higher consciousness into your body as rapidly and easily as possible. Merkaba is the fastest way. When you use the combination of the tones, of clearing miasms consciously, of working with it consciously, you can do what would take 2,000 years of evolution if you just left it alone. You can literally get it done in a couple of years. Now, right now, because we're in a political environment that's very volatile, that maybe we won't need to have it all activated in a couple of years, but maybe we will. That maybe, for me, is enough. Sorry, this thing bugged me. That maybe for me is enough to motivate me to do something, to take control of conscious evolution, if I have the ability to do that. So I don't know what your interest level is going to be in continuing to work with the grids directly or to be part of the team that's trying to get the planetary grids out of reversal. That's up to you. You're always welcome, and Lord knows you're needed. But on a personal level, even if you decided that you don't want to work with, with the group work, with the energy grids and the roundtables, you can still tremendously benefit from using the techniques here to assist yourself. If spiritual integration is important for you, and you can realize that spiritual integration is not just a process of wishful thinking and I decree it, therefore it is. That's the beginning. You have to want to, and you have to say you're going to. However, there is a method to do it. There is the fast way and the slow way. The slow way is assuming someone's going to do it for you up there, out there, through there somewhere. This has got to go. I can't deal with it. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You know, if we lose it, we lose it. On the tape. Okay. All right. That's the slow way. If you surrender it, figuring someone else or some other part of you will handle it. What if that other part of you is dependent on you to do it down here? And this is what it comes down to. We have all these wonderful levels of consciousness that we're working with. We are a part of that team, and our help is needed. We weren't sent down here to be little children that Mommy is going to hold our hand from the sky and direct us through so we can experience the Wonderland. That's not what humans were sent here for, unfortunately. If we do well, we get to go out and go on vacation to places that you can do that and just kind of, I'm off duty, leave me alone for 10,000 years, you know? You will get a chance somewhere to do this. However, right now, you can help yourself. You can help your soul, your oversoul, your avatar, your rishi, and your ascended master levels by doing your part and realizing there is a physics to creation, and that physics, they're the rules that Source set, that you as God set, to enter a manifest experience. You can't separate yourself from those rules when you're in a manifest experience. Those rules are governing you, whether you want to accept it or not. As long as you accept it, learn how to work with the rules are easy. The rules weren't put there to limit you. They were put there to allow the structure of the time matrix itself to exist so you, as a face of God, could come in and enjoy the experience. Part of that experience and enjoying it is being aware and getting progressively more of your God-knowing back. That God-knowing created this matrix. That God-knowing set up these physics. As you become a master, you don't become a master without knowing these. Any truly Christ-conscious being knows all this stuff. And it comes automatic. But it doesn't come automatic because some other part of them's handling it for them. You, as a Christed being, have all this information. You could teach it, you could speak it, and you just use it by will. That is when intention works. Once you have set the template, awakened it in the body, where you have the knowledge, the body knows how to respond to your cues. Okay, I know that's a crystal seal, so I send this command and it does that. You can give the commands, but the body is not going to listen until you make the link between what is it that command means in the terms and the language the body speaks. The body speaks in symbols, it speaks in scalar waves, it speaks in dimensionalized energy fields, it speaks in light and sound. If you become a master of light and sound, as it applies to your body, you will become a master of your consciousness while you're in a body. So that's why we teach this. It's not to make spirituality hard. It's to make it easy. What's hard is spending thousands and thousands of years reincarnating in one density because you forgot how to get out. And that's what's happened down here. So I hope that whatever you do with the planetary service work, that you at least try to use this structure. This structure means so much to me because I got out on it several times, even in times when nobody was ascending, because there was no information and everybody was blocking the gates. In the period of what I call Jeshua 12, we call him because he was a 12th level avatar, which meant he activated his 12 strands. He was actually an indigo, but he didn't activate any higher strands. They couldn't hold it on the planet at the time. Jeshua had a half-sister named Miriam, and they both worked with a person named John the Baptist historically. We had this technology because we were, and very gratefully, given the information by what are called the priests of Earth, from inner Earth. They're the Magi priest line, they are the Iani, and they had approached us because we had come in with soul contracts to do it. They'd given these teachings back to us. We were training a group to get them out because it was getting really rough as far as there's a lot of suppression of the Magi race lines. And there were groups of people who had been incarnating over and over and over again and were experiencing, they were getting trapped. They were trapped here and they were tired. We'd come in to get them out, and we were given these techniques, the very same techniques that are given now from the very same source. Because of the political events, we weren't able to get everybody out that we came for, which was a really heartbreaker for us because it was really hard to leave them behind. But we also knew that if we didn't get ourselves out, none of us were going to get out. That somebody had to get out to come back and get the others. These are the teachings that were used, despite all the odds, that Jeshua used to get himself into ascension so he could get out of the gates and not be stuck in Density 1. And these are the ones that Miriam used. I am Miriam, there. And I know that, and I've known that since I was a child. Now, the reason that I often speak very passionately about these teachings isn't because somebody taught them to me and told me they were great, so I said, okay, these are great, let's, let me teach them. No, I used them. And I used them in a time where the odds were against us, and they worked, and I got out. And I got out with a broken heart, because of all the ones I had to get left that had worked with this, and they were so close to getting out, but we didn't have access to the gates because the geographical locations were blocked at the times. There was one small way, and I managed to get out, and I was basically told, get out because you'll come back and get them. And that was the only thing that made me go. But that showed me, and I came back with the memory of knowing the value of these techniques. Now, there's a lot of people and a lot of beings and a lot of organizations out there that as soon as they realize what these teachings are about, they're going to take an anti-stance to this to make sure nobody reads it. I know that already, because it happened every darn time we brought the teachings in. They'd take what worked for them so they could mess with things, and then they'd make it so people were afraid of the rest of it, or they'd blame it, or they'd call it names, and they'd say it was bad. Very often they would take over temples that had been set up by the guardians, kill everybody that was guardians, take them over, run them with the same name, and put distorted teachings in them. There was all sorts of horrid things done. Now, I'm not the kind of type of person that needs you to believe in what I say. I'm not attached to it. I hope that you'll take the value of the teachings. So, as far as the personal level, you've got a gold mine in your hands just with the beginnings of these teachings. And believe me, there's a lot more. I think I'm going to be glued to a computer for the next 500 years. Fortunately, I won't be. It's not going to last that long having to put it in writing. People will get it before then. But when we get on past the personal, then it goes into the planetary service issues. You have a choice as a person. You came in as an indigo, which is really implied. You can figure that out. You don't have to believe me. But I already know that my workshops don't go out to anybody except indigos, because they're put out on a transmission of six-dimensional frequency. Only indigos have the sixth strand activated, where they hear that. So you get a call from your sixth strand that somehow puts you in a place where you find out about a workshop and something in there interests you, and you get there. All right? So even if you have no identification with being an indigo child, or you have no idea you even had a sixth-stranded DNA, there was a reason you showed up here. I know that. If I wanted to, I could look at all of your faces and give them about 2 minutes, and I could place you probably each in about 5 different lifetimes where we all knew each other. I try to turn that off when I'm teaching, because it gets too emotional, particularly for me if you don't remember me. I sort of preserve my own sanity and not break my own heart. No. And it also brings something in where we can get distracted by all of that. But it helps to know it too. I'm not going to go there yet. They're just getting into each one of you. No, I won't do that. Not right now. Because we need to get onto a little bit more, because we have that ferry to catch and things. I want to get onto the planetary service work part of it. The field guide that you have, even without the 250-page manual, will give you enough to begin doing something that will make a difference if you want to. You can do it alone, or you can find people around you that'll do it with you. What's nice about the field guide is, except for I think it's the last 2 pages or so that just remind you of what the mission is, that gets into some of the heavy stuff, you can take those pages out and you can share the field guide with anybody who doesn't want to hear about the Illuminati and stuff. If you want to help them have techniques they can enjoy, they can learn stuff through, there's one where it teaches you how to do scanning, topographical scanning in various different ways, and what to look for. Everything from vortices to Templar crystal implants, all sorts of things. So there's lots to play with here. And it's a play that will help you grow, and it will help the planet at the same time. So you can do it alone, you can share it, whatever you feel motivated to do. When you're an indigo and you come in with a big world service contract and you don't know it and you're just waking up, you can take it or leave it. Nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to hate you. But it does imply that there is a team. There was a huge team of indigos that came in, and there's a very tiny amount of them awake right now. And right now, there's a lot of programs interested from the fallen angelics trying to get indigos on their team because of the frequency they can run. Of course, they'll never tell you just what frequency you can run, and they probably won't tell you you're an indigo either. They'll just help you to use the right techniques to make sure they get the benefit out of your gene code. Nobody is going to punish you if you don't do your world service contract. It's all up to you, so there's no pressure in these programs whatsoever. There's no guilt trips, there's no fear trips. You know, if you don't follow this, and the world does what it does, it'll do what it will do, whatever that might be. We have some options. It may go into full shift, it may not go into full shift. This is what we're facing. We'll all be a part of whatever drama it is, but what we choose to do will make a difference. That much I will say, but it's not a guilt trip. I want you to know that. Now, for the people who want to make a difference, there are a couple of graphs I need to show you. That these are all contained within that larger book that I really wish they had let me know was supposed to be, part of this, because I would have had it ready. But they're telling me it wasn't supposed to go out. There's stuff that we're going to have here and in England that has to go into that book. So it wouldn't have been a done book anyway. Let me see, where do I start? Oh, I want to start with this graph. Now, you don't have these in your pages. This is to give you an idea when I talk about portals and stargates. What the heck is she talking about? All right, the graph on page 97 here, and I'm going to have to pass the book around. Well, maybe I can hold it up, because there's only one copy of this. Okay. How about? Okay, I'm doing all right. Yeah, how about? That's good. It's better than I thought. Okay. Now,
A little bit less than that.
all right, I'm gonna just walk by with this. So you see the graph on page 97 here that I'm gonna hold up for you. This shows you that stargates are real phenomena and portals. Stargates are vortices of energy that exist inside every planetary and stellar body. Okay? See, this is why I was really hoping the overhead would be available for this. They exist as little cones of energy, just like your Merkaba. Inside every planetary and stellar body, they're like sets of black and white holes. I'll bring it back to the front row in a minute. They work as sets of black and white holes, one electrical, one magnetic. Except they're sets of several of them. They're like chakras that are in a planet. So your chakras are like black and white holes in the body. Now, what stargates do and what makes it different between stargate and portal? Stargates run on a vertical axis, and they transmit energy between the three-dimensional frequency bands and densities. Okay? Portals don't go between densities. Portals are on either a horizontal or a diagonal angle. And what they do is...
Said on that side of the room, so we couldn't hear you over there.
All right, I'm trying to... This is rough. I'll just show the picture. Well, maybe I'll just talk about it first and show the picture. Pass the book. I don't know. Whatever the easiest way to do this is. This is bigger than the llama group. Okay. Now, stargates work like chakras. So do vortices on the planet. But stargates are more important. They're interwoven sets of black and white holes that transmit frequency and energy between harmonic universes, not just between dimensions, but between harmonic universes. What this means is, at certain times when they activate, they make a link between density 1 universes, density 2, density 3, density 4. When I talk about a Stargate opening cycle, what I'm talking about is a period of time when those configurations inside planets and suns and stars go through their cycle of activating, just like you can activate a chakra. When they activate, it allows the frequencies, the stellar, interstellar frequencies, from the highest densities or the highest dimensional levels of matter to come down, make a bridge of frequency between the stargates, and come down and infuse a whole galaxy and planetary system with energy. It's really the life force circulation system of planets and galaxies and universes. Now, every planet has stargates. Our planet has stargates that are called the Halls of Amente stargates. That was an ancient name that was given to our stargate system. Now, stargates run on a vertical axis, all right? They're like cones of energy, one like this and one like this, like a bow tie turned vertical. They run on a vertical axis, so they can take energy on a vertical axis. The primal life force currents run down through them. Then there are portals, that one will be horizontal and one will be on diagonal. These take in energy from the same density, the dimensions in one density level, and they all intersect at the center. So every planet and galaxy and star has its set of stargates that has a main vertical and a diagonal and a horizontal. So it has the portals and the stargate. This is the basic configuration of energy that stargates take. Now, if we look at the relationship between energy, dimensional bands, and density levels and time. Now, where time fits into this is time is an experience that we have by having our consciousness within the specific vibrational range of a set of dimensions. This is what gives us the experience of the movement and passage through time. I won't get heavily into time mechanics now, but I'd like you to understand when I talk about a stargate opening up to receive energy from, say, density 2 to bring it down to density 1, that opening creates a passageway between density 1 and density 2. Now, density 1 has its own inherent set of time cycles. The larger cycle is called a Uego cycle. A Uego cycle differs depending on the density level you're in as far as how long it is. Now, you have Uego cycles as the large time cycle in a universe, in a density. Then you have smaller things called time continua. You have 6 time continua in one time cycle, and you have many smaller things within the continua called time vectors. When we are talking about energy coming down from other densities, we are talking about an opening happening between time cycles, between the time cycles of this density and the time cycles of the other densities. When we talk about portals opening, the horizontal and diagonal ones, we're talking about different time continua opening to each other, or different time vectors opening to each other. So I wanted you to understand the basic structure of and function of when I say the word Stargate, that this is a real phenomenon. It's a phenomena of physics, a natural phenomenon of how the universe works. We're going into a stellar activation cycle, or a Stargate opening cycle. This time it's a big one, where not just the Stargates between density 1 and 2 are opening, but all of them, from density 5 on down, are opening this time. This is like the reset time for the whole time matrix. That's why everything is coming to a head in this time period, not just here. It's doing it in all the universes in this 15-dimensional time matrix. That's why things could be as amazingly strange, and could it really be that big and that much trouble? Yes. At certain time periods, it is. It's when things are reaching their peak after a full cycle, which is like a full vibrational rhythm through that whole 15-dimensional system. Everything is about vibration. Yes?
Can I just ask you a question? The different harmonic universes all have different cycles. So it's the alignment of, it could be a 40,000 and a 26,000,
right.
And
right.
To get that alignment exactly right.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
There is an amazing mathematics
Yeah.
that operates the time matrix, where literally billions of different tiny little sets of stargates in each little planet and each little galaxy are all synchronized, that at certain points in time the frequencies come together and the gates open. There are billions, infinite numbers of stargates in the universe in our 15-dimensional time matrix, because tiny things have them and big things have them. There's even little pieces of them left in things that are blown apart. There are stargates that are left hanging in space where there used to be things that got blown apart that they are no longer. The gates are still there. So when we talk about stargates, and the ones I'm talking about right now are stargates that are called the primary universal stargates. There are 12 primary universal stargates, and every planetary body, every sun, has its own stargate system inside that will link into those 12 primary universal stargates. The universal stargates, there's one for, I'll show you another, thank you very much. I'll show you another diagram in a minute. Oh, here's another thing to show. I'm not going to show that one yet. That'll be too confusing. All right, here. This, we can pass this around. It's probably easiest to pass it around. The diagram you're going to see now should look familiar. It's a Cathara grid, a 12-point Cathara grid. 10 minutes? Okay. That Cathara grid is also, just like it's in our bodies and it's in the planet, this is the structure of how the stargates run in a 15-dimensional time matrix, in our 15-dimensional time matrix. Now, just as we have the 12 that govern pre-matter into matter, and then there's the ones that go with the primal light fields and the primal sound fields, so you'd really have 2 Cathara grids. The primary 12 are the ones that allow movement between the 4 density levels of matter before you get into the primal light fields. These are what are opening now in our time period. They're going to open between, and they've already started, between the year 2000 and 2017 AD. This was known for thousands and thousands of years, and it was waited for, particularly since the year 22,326 BC, when there was another attempt of what's being attempted right now to completely reverse Earth's shields, so it could reverse the shields of inner Earth to get control of the pylon temples. That was the last time we came very close to having a stellar activation cycle, which the Guardians had to shut down, or that would have happened. All right? Now, this was a stalemate that waited until this time period. Everybody knew about it but us. So there was a lot of activity focused here, even though we didn't know it. Now, there is a mission that, if you care about assisting in the planetary mission that we're part of, it's really the original mission humans were sent here to do in the first place. Humans were created as a guardian race, and we were sent in to fix the planetary grids of Earth. Earth had been part of Terra in density 2, and Terra was almost blown up. The portions of Terra that ended up dropping in frequency, there was a large fix-it campaign run by the founders that allowed the pieces of that planet and its template to be reassembled in density 1 so it could re-evolve back in where it would become, or continue to be, what was called an ascension planet. That means a planet that has the ability to bring in the higher life force currents to get to a point where it can evolve through the densities. Planets evolve and can transmute molecular structure just like human bodies can. So there was this huge mission, and humans were created as part of that mission. They were created to do something called the Planetary Christos Realignment Mission. Christos equals D12 frequency, equals the divine template, or the divine blueprint, the scalar template, the free matter template of dimension 12. All right? Humans were created as part of a team, part of the universal security team that was assigned to this neck of the woods in the galaxies to fix this particular planetary grid and to run the frequencies through our DNA that would progressively reset the natural D12 pattern of the planet. Now, to get this commission, what our form was designed, our DNA template was designed to literally hold each one of us a little tiny piece of the coding that was part of Earth's D12 template. That template was called the Shield of Aramatena. That was the planet's name in density 4. We are resetting the Shield of Aramatena here, the divine blueprint of this planet. And we had come here originally for this purpose. Now, the purpose, it's funny, because we're not being asked to do anything different than what we agreed to do in the first place this time, except it's kind of like we need to do it fast. Because right now it needs to be done. We need to get these frequencies back into the grids before the end of 2002, so the dimensional blend experiment that the Illuminati have planned, that we talked about the other day, that will start a series of events that we do not want to see, that have to do with frequency fence and an eventual pole shift. We don't have to see those, we don't want to see those. If we do what we originally were commissioned to do and bring those frequencies in, bring those frequencies from our DNA, let the primal life force currents run. The codes in our DNA are putting pieces of the Earth's template back. That's how we were created. That's how it works when our DNA is working properly. That's why we have been targeted, because if you can get our DNA to run reverse, you can get those codes to go in the grids in reverse. And if you want to reverse the planetary shields, that's how you do it. You don't come in with a big crane and try to twist the world. It doesn't work that way. It's all about energy. So, what the mission is that we are on is at this point called the Planetary Christos Reclamation Mission. We're going to reclaim the gates here because they have been taken with that reverse Merkaba spin, plugging it into Nibiru. That is not natural. It was not part of Earth's template. And if it continues, the whole thing is going to go into reversal. Not only pole shift now, but it's going to be plugged into a line of stargates that are part of the time matrix that is still damaged, and it's run by fallen angelic races. We don't want that to happen. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm out here, so a lot of people sounding like a nut. I know what this mission is about, and I know the Indigos are all a part of it, even if they don't remember. Now, I'm going to need the book back for a sec. Did everybody get a chance to see that one?
No, this side didn't.
Which side didn't? Okay. There's one I really have to get to. Some of this I can go over on the other one. Okay. Okay. This one, these guys. Who's, all right, nobody on this side saw it? Okay, pass that around. Okay. Now, some of the people from, what I'm going to ask here is if it gets to having to pass stuff around really fast because we don't have long to get to the ferry, the people who have been to Kauai and who have been to the New York City workshop, you guys have this material in your Kauai books and it's in the New York books. So I would, let's let the Irish people see it first, okay? Because I don't have the books to give them right now so they can take it with them. The Planetary Christos Realignment Mission is basically, there are 24 bases, or those crystal temple bases that we talked about, that the Nibiruan dyadic crystal grid at Stonehenge is anchoring its frequencies through. The first thing we're going to do is activate and build a huge amount of energy when we go to the Island of Eye. Now, the Island of Eye is called Q Site 11. It's positioned directly over Stargate 11 of inner Earth. And it's the activation site for Stargate 11 on Earth. That's why that site was chosen. In a minute, when we're done with that book, I'm going to show you basically how we're running current. So you see in the planetary Cathara grid why we're going to the sites we're going. There's not a lot of time to explore it, but most of you are coming. The only person that's not, I think, coming, you're not coming to the, I think, because you have to catch a plane, right?
I want to try that.
Okay. All right. If you can't, I would say let her see the book first, because we can finish this on the island without any problems, because everybody else is coming. But there's a reason why. There are certain sites that we're being asked to go to between now and the end of 2002. In the process of this, we're going to run roundtables. What the roundtables do is get the Merkaba spinning the right way, amplify the energy, bring in the Kundalini and the Kirashe when we use that activation sequence that we just got almost bounced out of in the room. Oh, that really bugged me. It's a good sequence, though. It really bugged me to have people pushing in like that when we were trying to do it. Yeah, I know. I'm sure they're happy about it, too. Yes. 5 minutes? Okay. Now, the process of what we're involved in, if you want to be part of the Azurite Christos realignment mission, we have a lot of help. We're working with the Maharaji from Sirius B. We're working with tons of them from Inner Earth, especially the Iani, which were the Magi rail lines that came in to help with this purpose. There are probably over 20 billion different races and teams that are assisting us in this process. We're a link in a chain, and if we're a weak link, that's where it's going to break. So there's a lot of beings depending on us, but there's a lot of beings helping us. It's very simple what we have to do. We simply go to a place, run our currents, put our geometrical bodies in the right place, put ourselves in the right place geometrically, and if we know the maps, which are there, I'm going to let her see the maps first. The people from Ireland, these are in the books. The other people have them. You've got the maps and keys things. It shows you the 12 primary gate sites and the 12 primary Q sites on the planet. And the other maps that are in the intensive book that I showed yesterday, they were the new ones. Shows the axiotonal line so you know what's affecting what. Now, what we're basically doing is running the Christos current, the D12 Maharata current, from one site to another, through their temples, through that grid. First we need to break the main connection, which is the one that's at Stonehenge, that's connecting to the battle star Nibiru, or Wormwood. All right, that's the one holding that frequency. We run D12 frequency through that. It's going to neutralize. It's going to reverse the spin on, or the spin. It's actually a Merkaba zone that they have set there. It's going to put it back in the right order, which is going to break the link to Nibiru and to the battle star. The place would roll within 3 days if the guys from Sirius B in Density 2 didn't already have the gate open, Gate 6, to hold the planetary Merkaba. It's not going to roll because of that. So we don't have to worry about that. Yep. You guys see that? Now, this was all made possible because of the Kauai trip, where something called the Halls of Amareya were opened on the planet. The Halls of Amareya are a passage from Universal Stargate 12 to 9 to 6 to 3. 3 comes down in Earth. By opening that frequency, they're allowing an extremely strong Maharata D12 current to come down from Stargate 12, which is Lyra Aramitana. Now, because of that, we have this big current that we can draw from one place to another. So as we go in our groups to one place, there are certain techniques we use with the roundtables to draw energy from the last one that was activated. What we're going to do between Ireland and England is, I explained before yesterday, that if you look at on a Cathara grid, you can imagine 2 Cathara grids. There is a diagram in here someplace if it ever comes back, the book ever comes back. There are, imagine 2 Cathara grids, right? They have the numbers 12 all the way down. 11 is, you have 12 and then 11, right, in your Cathara grid? If you have the 2 Cathara grids separate from each other, there's a line of frequency that goes between each of the ones with the same number. On that 11 to 11 line, you have Ireland as the Q site, and you have England as the Stargate site, the area of the Vale of Pusey in England. Now, right in the middle of it is where the Stonehenge thing is anchoring. It's not exactly positioned in the middle, but it's right on this line. That frequency is being anchored to reverse the rest of everything. That's what's keeping Earth's Merkaba in reversal. What we're going to do is build up the frequency here in Ireland, which requires activating the buried Ark of the Covenant. with its rod and staff tools. We're going to have help with that, and there's probably going to be more guidance given about what it's all about when we get there, as usual, because it's on security clearance. Once the energy is built here by activating the rod and the staff and drawing the frequency in from what we activated in Kauai, Hawaii, which was where we're going to be drawing the frequency from Kauai, which is associated with Q site 12. We're going to draw it down through. It's already been moving its way down through. Actually, it's around France at this point. We're going to be drawing it in, and we're going to be building it at the Q site in Ireland. That's why your grids are going to amplify all sorts of ways over here. But it's good. It's a good amplification. It'll just speed things up a bit. Then we're going to go to England, and we're going to pull. We're going to pull that energy, and that charge is going to come through, and it's going to set the right Merkaba into the Stonehenge site, which is going to make the other things detach. Then it's a process of simply going to specific sites, and we don't have to go to all 24. Some of them can be taken out and recoded on just by going to one site. We can get a couple of them. So we have in the next, between now and 2002, the end of 2002, there are, I believe, 8 of them on the list, and there's one not listed yet, place that we need to go to run the rounds. Now, in your field guides, I did create a list. I believe I put a list of the bases right in the back. There should be a list of the bases and a list of the places that we're going to recode them. Now, this is it's a very nice way to take your planet back when it's been hijacked, because it doesn't involve bombs, wars, or being mean to anybody. It simply means going and doing what we were asked to come here to do in the first place, restore the planetary Christos template. So that's what the mission is about. There'll be a lot more that's revealed as we go along. There's so much writing that goes with this, I can hardly keep up with it. You know, every time there's something new to do, there's a whole huge manual at this point to do it. That's why this one was given, like, literally half of it on the plane coming over in chase. You know? So the book will be available for this. Like Michael said, when we get home, within about 10 days, I'll be able to finish up. I'll know what I have to add from Ireland and England that you know, they wanted to wait, because I can hardly wait to find out what that is. And they will be available. We make them as reasonable as we can as far as cost. Now, we're going to have to, at this point, get ready to go so we don't miss the ferry. I'm seeing people stand up and Michael looking like we need to go, right? Okay.
Basically, just simple convoy.
Affiliation was from back in the old days. This will make more sense when we get into some of the history. Here's why I wanted to make sure somehow, some way, wherever we ended up, I wanted to go over some of the history of what is now known as the Atlantean conspiracy. Because what we're living today is a direct result and a direct part of an event that was known as the Atlantean conspiracy. And it's actually an event that didn't stop. It's an event that continued on to bring us to the point where we are today. Now, I don't want to get too heavily in it until I find out if they're going to demand that we go in now or they're not going to feed us. All right? Well, don't go for it and see what happens. But we need to remain flexible, because I don't know about you guys, but we're hungry. We didn't, have any time to eat anything tonight, so we're I think what I want to start with where history is concerned, so we understand a little bit more about the races. The people who live in the Kauai workshop will have the most exposure to this. The New York City workshop people will have some. The people from Ireland have none. So we'll go over this really from the beginning. Now, I wish I had the overhead projector to do this. When it's necessary to show graphs, I'll just simply have to pass the one master around, and you can look at it. And I'll talk about it first, and then pass it around so you get a chance to look at it. Let me see here. I want to start with this. I didn't do that. Let's do us. Okay. I'm going to start with, it's called the genetic ascendancy of the angelic human lineage. This is basically information on what is, and you've heard me talk in the workshops about humans and hybrids, but that hasn't been explained as far as what do you mean hybrids, and what is the difference between hybrid and human, because it's pretty obvious that at this point in time we all look like human beings in human bodies, and that's how we come to know ourselves. What's interesting about revelation of the hidden and once forbidden history, and it wasn't forbidden by God, it was forbidden by the Anunnaki and the Draconians, because if we knew our history, things would change, because we would start to remember what we had come here for. Now, angelic humans, or the original human lineage, was created through
a chain, a genetic chain, that came down from the primal sound fields. All of us and everything started there in the primal sound fields. From there, they went into the primal light fields to become part of the Brenna Rishi that we talked about before. From the Brenna Rishi point down, that's where race diversification started coming into being. When you had density 4 in the primal light fields, the primary races that were originally created, and this was about 950 billion years ago, were the Elohai Elohim, the Seraphai Seraphim, and a group called the Brahmarama. They were the emerald, gold, and amethyst order Renai families. They were the first manifestations into the beginnings of density of those families. So everything in this time matrix literally came out of the families of consciousness that were the Brenna Rishis in density 5, and then the founders races that were the first races that they created. So everyone is attached to either the Elohai Elohim, the Seraphai Seraphim, or the Brahmarama. The Brahmarama go with the violet ray people, or the violet flame people, which would be the violet primal light field of dimension 15. Now when you go up the scale, dimension 15 does not connect to the Akkadic level. You have to go all the way up in expansion and down to dimension 13. So in terms of highest coding and containing more scalar wave patterns in the DNA template, it would be the ones of D13 that carried the blue flame, or the Akkadic ray, that had the full spectrum of all of the templates that belong to the 15-dimensional time matrix and the 3 levels of the sound pits beyond that. So the people of the blue flame, as they were called, that came out of the blue flame from Brenna Rishi, that was called the Emerald Order, and it was the Elohai Elohim that were the first founders race manifestation out of the Brenna Order, that was the Emerald Order. Now we call it Emerald, it goes with blue flame, but it's actually, when you go to D13, it's not powder blue. You can get sub-frequencies of that here, and we use that in some of your work. But the full spectrum, if we were going to see it in color, as far as its wavelength, it would be a pale turquoise color. So it's like a blue-green. That's why it's known as the Emerald Order. And it's called the blue flame, but it's really the blue-green flame. And the Emerald Order Brenna Rishi created the Elohai Elohim. They were a founders race, or a Christos founders race, because they entered from the primal light fields into the beginnings of form in the density 4 primal light fields of dimension 10, 11, and 12. The violet ray people, or the ones that came from the violet light field, Brenna Rishi, were the Brahmarama, and they were also a Christos race, a Christos founders race. And the gold order people, they came from the gold light spectrum that is the 14 level. They are the Seraphai Seraphim. Now each of those founders races created a bunch of different types of forms by combining scalar wave patterns that became the blueprints for manifestation. The Elohai Elohim, their primary form creation was a hominid feline form. The Brahmarama's primary form of creation were cetacean or cetacean types. We had like dolphin, whale, and those kind of things. And the gold order people, their founders races created several different types of race strains. They created reptilian race strains. They created draconian, which is different. It's like the difference between a snake and a dragon. Okay. They created insectoid type races, and they created avian type races, or bird type people. Right? Now these forms that I'm talking about, and these races of people, these were in density 4, the primal light fields.
Did we take bodies? Both? Did we be felines and dolphins? Did we do mixing of those things? Did we go in that incarnation?
Yeah, actually, what happened at the beginning of it, 950 billion years ago, when they see that the last life wave into this time matrix, this is way before humans came into the picture. Okay. And I want to show you the progression of how the creation came down, so we can begin to understand what we're connected to and what we're not. Because that becomes significant in relation to the contemporary and the ancient drama that we're still connected to. Because there are certain races that are trying to make it look like we're their children so they can guide us and lead us to a place we don't want to be, and it is not true that we're their children. This is one of the deceptions that's taking place. And if we begin to understand the progression of how beings got down here in the first place, it helps.
to understand what's taking place and why we need to make a stand for the truth of the matter rather than for the deceptions that are being presented. Now, when we're back up in density 4 and the Christos founder spaces, the gold order beings, they had the most diversification at first. They had the reptilians, they had the avians, they had the insectoid forms. And these were all blessed forms. These were all Christos forms. They weren't bad reptiles, they weren't bad dragons, they weren't bad insects, and they weren't bad avians. There was no negative polarity. Now you can have positive negative or you can have negative negative. When I say negative negative, I'm referring to taking the polarity of the lower vibrational particle, let's say, because that's really what negative is referring to, but taking it in an anti-Christos sense, where you begin to work against the original intentions of the whole. That didn't happen for a very long time. There's all sorts of, you could say, creation experiments that were done among these races. They found themselves in new manifest forms. They knew they were faces of God. They knew that they were part of wholeness, and they knew that they were here to create and to see the time matrix. And they began to do that. So they began to combine within themselves. They began to combine other forms between each other. They began to combine forms to make new forms, new races, new life strains, new ways of experiencing reality. Now, when these original creation, and I don't like to call them experiments because it sounds like it was a soulless scientific thing. It wasn't. It was a joyful creation thing, just like giving birth to a child. It was experimenting with putting portions of their own consciousness, these founders' races, would put portions of their own consciousness into these new forms to see what joyful life experience they could create. That was the original intention.
Creation?
Yes. Yes, Christos, when I say the word Christos, it has to do with D12, and usually D10, 11, and 12, density 4. Above that, you have density 5, where you have dimensions 13, 14, 15. That's where the Brenna are, the Brennarishi. They are they're in thermoplasmic or gaseous form. They're collectives of consciousness.
Are they the ones who created the time matrix?
Let's say, this is interesting, because if we look at the time matrix as separate from what they are, we're missing something. When Creator decided, or the whole Creator, God, decided to create within itself the experience of being able to be externalized from itself. It's all taking place within itself. It put portions of itself first into sets of vibration that became the primal sound fields. So these are not just fields of energy. These are fields of consciousness. These are the ascended master fields, the levels of source that perpetually and eternally stay there to maintain the structure that time matrices can be created within. Now, just as the primal sound fields, the ascended master consciousness, stays there as eternal beings that hold that framework for manifestation so the rest can come, the next level of polarization, where portions of the ascended master consciousness choose to polarize themselves to be able to create the geometric interrelationships of energy with their consciousness that create the primal light fields. So the Brennarishi are not just living in the primal light fields. They are the consciousness that composes the primal light fields. And every being that manifests is a part of one of them, just like every being is a part of the ascended masters and every being is a part of source. The model of creation that this is called, it's called stair-step creation, because you're literally stepping down in frequency and vibration source into the ability to have externalized, individuated manifestations of self. This is where the idea of I am God and we are all one comes from. It is only one consciousness source that creates within itself a myriad of diversified types of reality fields that portions of itself can experience in individuation. So nothing can ever be separated from source, because it is always eternally taking place within source. The only difference, and the only reason it matters, whether you ascend or turn into space dust, you're both blessed. But when you're space dust, you have such a small template that you can hold only such a small sense of recognition of the wonder and the glory and the power of what it means to be a face of source that has the ability to express in a three-dimensional or more dimensional type of framework. So it's worth investing what it takes to be able to accrete. It's called accretion, where you bring in more frequency, more energy
more of your God presence into yourself so you can expand rather than fragment and become small again. But the small and the large are equally as blessed because they are all manifestations of Source taking place within Source. So when we have the primal sound fields, they are a consciousness field that takes the form of sound frequency, sound vibration. The primal light fields are portions of that consciousness that step themselves down and take on different relationships and energy to be able to form scalar wave grids that create the template for which dimensionalization can take place within. The primal sound fields begin, or the light fields begin dimensionalization. That's where dimensions 13, 14, and 15 begin. And then you can picture them as if Source is a endless, boundless, unquantifiable quantity of energy. And within itself, it creates this area within itself that is the vibrations of the primal sound fields. And then within those, it creates the movement of energy, or its consciousness within itself. It creates the primal light fields. And the primal light fields hold a consciousness that the identity of which is called the Brahma Rishi. Now every one of us here, just like the Brahma Rishi, are actually a portion of the consciousness that was the primal sound field, choosing to move itself in a different direction so its energy would interact with itself in a different way to create primal sound, light fields. We are the same. We are a step down from that. And it implies that we are a part of each of that. We came from the one consciousness, and it basically fragmented itself down within itself in order to be able to experience what it meant to be individuated. Because there are a lot of interesting things you could experience in individuation, like bodies, like trees, like worlds, like the ability to sit back and know your a gaseous consciousness, and you have the ability to create holographic worlds that you can then put portions of yourself within to experience. So the Brahma Rishi have that type of consciousness where they know themselves as eternal forever. They know themselves as portions of Source that choose to stay there to hold the framework. And they have a good time doing it because they know that they are not the only creator, but they are creators just like their Source, because they're faces of that Source. So they choose to create different types of reality fields within dimensionalization in order to experience themselves in many different ways. And this is why Source created the whole framework in the first place, to have a way of experiencing itself in many different ways. But the whole truth of the matter, as we come back to it, we are all one consciousness. We are composed of the same substance, and that is the substance of the consciousness of God. So when we get down from the primal sound fields to the primal light fields in the Brahma Rishi, then the Brahma Rishi decide they want to enter more types of manifestation, where they can experience more and more diversification. And the diversification comes in when they create the framework itself for dimensionalization. So there's a consciousness to each dimension. It's not just an energy field. It's a portion of the Brahma Rishi consciousness that breaks itself down. It polarizes itself in order to break itself down. Where if it is an electrical field, it takes portions of itself and reverses the natural scalar wave patterns that it's holding. So part of it becomes magnetic and part becomes electric. Now, with this structure, you have within the primal light fields, the first diversification becomes the dimensions. So the Brahma Rishi literally break themselves down to become the dimensional wave fields, the consciousness that holds those wave fields as a framework for other portions of itself to experience reality within. Once that was created, and at the point where that is created, the D12 light fields are beginning, the liquid light, where it goes from gaseous substance and begins to densify and goes into a liquid gaseous substance, which is liquid light. The liquid light level is what we call the Christos level, and this is where the Christos founders races fit in. They are the Brahma Rishi taking on the form of a dimensional band of D12, where from there they begin to create different race trains of themselves and put portions of their consciousness into those forms in order to experience the experience of manifestation, the experience of being created in manifestation. There are agreements made by the mind of God and by the Brahma Rishi and by the Ascended Masters collectors in sound fields that when this experiment of joyful creation and exploration was going to be done, it was going to be done with the intentions of love,
it was going to be done with the intentions of freedom. Source was not going to deny any portions of itself, anything that it had itself. Source was not a cruel or manipulative or angry God like some of the books depict. That was things that were placed upon the idea of Source that came more from the minds of men or fallen angelic than it did from the nature of Source. Source is an eternally loving form of energy and consciousness, identity, and intelligence. However, Source also learns. And this experiment of joyful creation, creating time matrices and systems where externalization could take place. Source learns a lot through the feedback it gets from its parts that are in there. One of the things that was quite amazing, and one of the lessons that Source learned about itself in this time matrix, is what polarization of energy could actually do. What were the extremes of polarization of energy? Because this particular time matrix took a path of experience that was a little bit beyond what the original intentions had been. If the original intentions had been being able to experience the lower magnetic vibrations and the higher electrical vibrations, which gives you a basic polarity, doesn't give you good and evil, it gives you kind of a higher feeling and a lower feeling, but neither of them were particularly negative. This one went this way, where at times it was extremely good, let's say, in a high electrical field, and at times it swung back the other way. We're in one of those time cycles where we're coming off the end of a very dark cycle or a low cycle where we went very, very magnetic. In these cycles, Source gets to experience what it means to be separate from itself. Because Source is always connected to each of us. And each of us that gets lost along the way forgets it's part of Source. It feels our pain. It feels our joy when we're happy. It feels the distortions in our consciousness. Now, when certain things went wrong, and it didn't start with this time matrix, it started with others, there were certain things that Source needed to learn. Because as it created things that it didn't exactly realize it intended to create. Where, whoops, I mixed that and that together, and this came out. That wasn't what I was exactly aiming for. So Source learned that it needs to learn more about what it meant to create manifest worlds. This world, and this system, this 15-dimensional system, is actually not too negative compared to some of the others that have actually imploded upon themselves. And when they implode upon themselves, what it's like, you could compare it roughly to having an aneurysm in your brain. If your brain was Source, and a part of it just stopped functioning, and exploded and threw energy all over, it could almost make the rest of it stop functioning. This is what Source experiences when a time matrix implodes on itself. The energy is still within itself, but it's all in disharmonic, chaotic form. If all of Source were to turn to that, no one knows what that would do, including Source, because that has never happened. Because Source is an energy field, and a consciousness and intelligence that always has existed. There was no creation point for it. It has points when it changes form from chaos back into order, chaos back into order. But if that balance between chaos and order, or fragmentation and becoming whole again, if it gets to the point where chaos overcomes the order, there's literally the potential that it would all go away. Source doesn't even know what that means, because it's something that has never existed. Source also knows that things can exist that one doesn't exactly expect to come into existence, and it found that out by creating manifest worlds within itself. In the original intention, even though Source knows all, it also learned it could learn. It also learned that sometimes when it puts portions of itself away from itself, within itself, to experience things, they take on a whole life of their own, and all sorts of things come out of it that on this level it didn't intend. It's like being parents and having a child, and you have certain intentions you hope for your child, and then you watch your child do something totally different, and it may be something you really don't want to happen. You may watch the child destroy itself. This was a potentiality that Source knew potentially existed, but it didn't become a reality to Source until it tried it and saw what happened when things like that are experienced. Source learned the concept of pain, or the knowing of pain, through us, through the beings it created that became out of harmony with the natural order and went into chaos
to the point where they were in pain or were in suffering. So we are source, and as source we learn. We learn about what that means to be source. It's like discovering your own identity. But when you have an identity that's huge and boundless and endless, you're going to be exploring it for a very long time. When you get up into the other levels of ascended mastery, when you get into the primal sound fields, where you don't have any bodies hanging out down here anymore, and you know you're still individuated enough where you have ascension of identity. You can stand and say, I am the face of source, but I am not the whole thing, because I am a fragmented portion. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong. To be able to hold a certain type of individuation instead of just blending in to the unified field of source is a good place to be. That's what ascended masters like to do. When you go back into at one minute with source, there's two ways to do it. You can go back and get absorbed as if it were a puddle and you were a raindrop, and all of a sudden your identity is scattered and there's nothing left of you. The you that you know, the you that you have memory, the you that you can stand and look at something and know a distinction between I am this and I am a part of that, but I am also this. We are able to have this because of the creation of the time matrix and of the energy matrix. The source experiences perpetually new portions of itself by putting more portions in and creating new types of experience. So when we come in, we all go through the process of being source, then moving our consciousness in a way where we come into the primal sound fields, moving our consciousness from there to become part of the primal light field, or the Brahma-Rishi. The Brahma-Rishi are a universal family of consciousness. Okay? That means in our time matrix, they are a family of consciousness that all of us are connected through in this time matrix. You don't get in here without having a part of you stationed there. Now, there are other time matrices that have other families of consciousness. But all of those families of consciousness that form time matrices, all of those Brahma-Rishi families that form time matrices, are all connected to the primal light fields and the ascended master's consciousness. So there's one big family, and unfortunately it's not always a happy family, and that's what's happening here. That's why any choice other than genuine love is a choice of misunderstanding. It's a choice of not realizing the truth of what creation is about. It's thinking you're separate, and that's part of the lesson the Source wanted to experience, but not to the degree where many, many parts of itself became lost and trapped in time, because it completely forgot that it was part of this greater plan. Now, the races that have come down, there are many, many. From our numbering system, there are infinite numbers of races in this time matrix. Now, there are other numbering systems, our ability to count things. They go far beyond the system that we're using, the base 10 system we're using. This is a very, in most terms, considered primitive numbering system. Our mathematics are very primitive here. Our concepts of how reality works are very primitive here. That wasn't always the case. That's because the knowledge has been taken away from here and our memories have been erased. And we will get that back. We will get the information back, piece by piece. One of the most important parts of the information is realizing our true heritage. First, we need to realize, before we start to really look at the fact that just because we all look like humans, that doesn't mean we're human souls within human bodies, right? That's a rude awakening to a lot of people on the planet, because the first thing is, oh God, I hope I'm human, you know? But you only go that way if you think it's bad to be one of the others, and it isn't. The primary races in this time matrix, there are many, many of them, right? They're infinitely, to try to count them is impossible from our numbering system. However, when it comes down to the races who have been directly interacting with birth, there are a number of them that are the primary races that have always interacted here. And these are the ones we need to understand most if we're going to understand what's happening in our contemporary drama. We go back to the Christos founders races in density 4. We had the Elohai Elohim, the Seraphai Seraphim, and the Brahmarama. They came out of the gold, the amethyst, and the emerald order, Brahma-Rishi, from the density 5 above. They began to create race strains, all sorts of different ones. The feline hominid was the primary form that was used by the Elohai Elohim. They also created certain types of cetacean life forms. And at first, they were in, or at first, or at there, let's say, because it's all simultaneous, in those points of creation that exist in density 4, these forms were made of liquid light.
they would progressively get more density or ability to hold form. Instead of being like water, they could hold form, like kind of jelly. Okay? I have to compare it to some kind of substance to give you an idea of the substance. The races were started there, in that level of substance. And then from there, they were downscaled to the next set of three-dimensional bands into density 3, which was etheric matter form. There's more differentiation there. And the differentiation came from, if you only had 3 founders collectives here in density 5, and then they created 3 primary Christos founders races in density 4. How in the heck did we get so many different race variations? It was by taking the templates, the genetic templates, and it's genetic. It's not just genetic. It refers to the scalar wave templates that the consciousness itself takes on in order to enter time. If you take one primary template, it's all the same as far as the primal light fields. Then you begin to move that and change frequencies within it, change scalar wave patterns, and have them have different relationships to each other. You're still using the same X amount of units, but you're rearranging them in different orders, and that will give you a different manifestation. So this is how diversification of form, besides the 3 that came in, were able to happen. Within each of the 3 families, the Ilaha, Elohim, Seraphim, and the Brahma, there were various different types of forms tried by taking what was their template and combining it in different ways. If you look at a template as sets of fire letters, or key lines, or units of consciousness arranged in groups in very specific relationships. If you change those relationships, a different form would emerge from them. So diversification began as the founders' races began to experiment with what they had. And the experiment was an experiment of love. They were going to see what forms they could put themselves in next, and what they could do with those forms, and what might they be able to see and perceive and experience through those forms. It was like a child who's just getting functional where it can get up and stand up and walk around and check out the room it's in. Everything's fair game. It just wants to feel and see and touch, and the whole world is an amazing place. This is how the founders felt in their creation point, where they realized they had the power to create. Gee, what do I create? What did I create? And they would go explore it. Unfortunately, what happened with this is there's a problem with, you can compare it to inbreeding. When you take humans, for example, and one family line, if they continue to marry within their own family line, brothers and sisters marry each other, etc., you start to get what's called code convolution. Code convolution means you put too much of the same imprint together over and over and over. It begins to dilute and change the original imprint, and you end up with kind of random characteristics that pop up that were not part of the plan, and they're usually a lower form of characteristics than what was originally characteristic of what you combined. This began to happen within some of the race strains of the 3 primary founders races. It began to happen first within the Seraphim, and it created races called the fallen Seraphim. These races were, the first level of them were actually in dimension 10, and that's still density 4. So they were made of liquid light. They didn't have the full Christos frequency of D12. But they were race strains, and the primary race strains of the fallen Seraphim that became distorted were one group that were in reptilian form, one group that were in draconian form, and one group that was in insectoid form. They were the first ones to become what was considered a fallen race. This fall happened between the point of 950 billion years ago and 250 billion years ago. And it was not a process that happened overnight. It was a process of inbreeding that continued to happen, yet to continue to progress until it reached a point of crisis where literally the scalar wave patterns with fire letter sequences that were held within that template began to reverse themselves and turn in on themselves, where they couldn't even pull in the D12 frequency. They became cut off from the Christos founders races who had created them. So it was like putting yourself into a hologram, and all of a sudden somebody cuts the chain between you and the hologram, and you have a part of yourself stuck there. This is how the founders races look at this. Anybody that's stuck in a time matrix is a part of themselves that's stuck here. So their love and devotion is a love and devotion for us and for each of us, but it's also for themselves. If we're stuck, they're stuck. Now, the other race, they're going to have problems with Ilaha Elohim. And it was interesting because the 3 places we were going to say, okay, where did these races come? You know, we know what they are. Where were they put? They were put in density 4, dimensions 10, 11, and 12, at the 3 primary locations of the 3 primary stargates in density 4, starting 12, 11, and 10. If we look up in our skies, that would correspond to the Lyra star system. It's called the cradle of Lyra, because that's where the life matrix was seated in the last wave in this time matrix. The Elohai Elohim and the Emerald Order beings were seated at gate 12, and the founders' races there, the Elohai Elohim, were appointed as the primary guardians of gate 12. That was the big gate. That was the one that controlled the connection between the primal light fields and the time matrix. They were appointed as the guardians of that, the Elohai Elohim. Then the Gold Order, the ones that went with dimension 14, were appointed as guardians of a planet called, Gold Order got Vega. They got D10 Vega Lyra, okay, or Lyra Vega. In the Lyra system, there's a planet Vega, what we call Vega. There's a location in density 4 that corresponds to that planet, that star that we see as Vega here. That the Gold Order beings, they came out of the Gold Order Brenno, they came out of the Seraphim matrix. They were appointed as guardians. That was gate 10. And then gate 11, which is the one we've been having all sorts of trouble with in this time matrix, there were a mixed group. One was Brahmarama of the violet flame people, and one was portions of the Elohai Elohim. So that was kind of like a joint controlled place, or a joint guarded place. They were appointed as guardians of this time matrix and protectors of the consciousness there within. Code convolution started to happen first within the ones that were governing Vega. And this is where the reptilian and the draconian races and the insectoid races, certain groups of them, not all of them, just a certain small collective of each of them, started to get where their thinking was just no longer clear because their templates were all messed up. Now there were choices the founders had to make. Do we destroy these life forms and simply reclaim the life force? Or do we respect their individuation, that they now have as sentient beings all unto themselves? This was a dilemma they'd never faced before. To annihilate something because its form wasn't functioning the way it was supposed to was not an idea that was comfortable to the founders. Rehabilitation was the stand they took in this time matrix. Around the same time that these things were happening in the Vega system, the ones at gate 11, which is a planet called Avion. It was gate 11 Avion, where you had the Brahmarama and portions of the Elohai Elohim. They had interbred. And this is one of the first experiments where they actually combined the different families, where you had Brahmarama violet flame and the Elohai Elohim blue flame, or the Emerald Order and the Amethyst Order, created a life form. They created several. One of them was what became an aquatic ape form. One of them was a cetacean form. The cetacean form had more of the violet frequency, or the template that went with the violet family. It was called the violet family, right? They were all right. They managed to sustain most of their coding. There was a small group of them that didn't, and became code convoluted. And when code convolution happens in the template, the consciousness becomes distorted, and it begins to feel itself separate from the rest of the matrix that it's in. And it begins to take stances of competition rather than cooperation, because it no longer remembers it's part of the oneness. This is what was happening in both the Vega system and the Avion system in Lyra. There's a really strange thing that took place, and this is where our stories of the original sin came down. This was the original sin. The races on Vega, these were the Seraphim races that were code convoluted, the Draconians, the Reptilians, the Insectoids. They were beginning to make decisions that the other races on Avion were beginning to fear. The ones who were beginning to fear it were the ones that were also in code convolution. The founders felt that these could be worked out and these races could be healed. But these races didn't feel that between themselves. The councils, because we call them councils, the groups of beings that communicate with the founders as far as how things are going on their planet or whatever. The councils of Avion petitioned the councils of Arantana, which was the D12 gate. They were the high councils. and said, we want you to destroy the ones of Vega, the draconian races, the reptile races, the insectoid races, because they're a threat to us, and they're threatening to break the original agreement of our co-creation here. And the original agreement was called the Emerald Covenant, because it was upheld by the Akkadic level, the first level of individuation from source. It was upheld by the Ascended Masters from that level and all of the others, and by the Emerald Order realm. Well, when the petition was made by the beings that were in co-convolution from Gate 11, Avion, to the founders, the Christos founders, that were the ones running Gate 12, the Eli Elohim family, they said, well, I'm sorry, we're not going to destroy them. We will help to rehabilitate them and we will protect you if there is a threat. That wasn't good enough for the races on Avion. They decided that they would take matters into their own hands. And if the founders wouldn't destroy them, the Vegan people, they would. But that wasn't permitted. And the founders said, excuse me, no, you're not going to do that. You're making yourselves as bad as the thing you're trying to destroy by doing that. They tried to work with both races. And finally, the original sin took place. It wasn't the draconian races and the reptilian races that did it. It was the races of the fallen Elohi Elohim that decided they take matters into their own hands to the point where they would destroy Gate 12 and the Founder's planet. And they blew up Avion, part of it. And doing that, they blew up Aramacana. This is Gate 12, the way out of here. If Gate 12 is blown, nothing can make it into expansion to the final light fields in the time matrix. They began to reverse this matrix and start to run the stargates on reverse sequence fire letter codes or frequencies. They would reverse the frequencies. They tried to take over the entire time matrix and the whole light field within it, figuring that now that they had severed their connection from source, from the primal light fields, from their Granarishi families, from their founders, they knew they were finite. They could not get any of the perpetual flow of the currents of frequency and consciousness that would be perpetually fed into time matrices that had their connection to source. They wanted to become source themselves. And this was a product of the distorted thinking. It was a product of the distorted templates. The founders' races never gave up on them. They never tried to destroy any of these races. But it's turned into a lot of chaos ever since. The races of Avion became known as the fallen Anu Elohim. You had the Elohai Elohim, and you had the Anu Elohim. The Anu Elohim were the ones who decided they were going to take over this time matrix, and their first mission was to absolutely destroy the Draconian races, all of the fallen Seraphim races and the Seraphim races. They felt that they went into a space of perceiving themselves in race supremacy. And they decided that nothing but Anu Elohim consciousness would be living in this time matrix, and they were going to destroy and feed on the consciousness of all of the other life forms that were here. That was the first move for what's called the Antichrist agenda. That move was made out of sickness of mind. It was born of sickness of template. The founders have never hated them for it, and no one else has. They're part of the wholeness. But they were very, very sick when they did this. These are avatars. These are not children. These are not little babies down here that don't know how to hold power or how to create. They are masters in certain ways. Masters who have lost the ability to understand the connection to source. The feeling we call love is a feeling that's born of a state of vibrational harmonization. They have lost their ability to reach that state of vibrational harmonization, even within themselves. They're a conquesting race. And in retaliation for the fact that all of a sudden the Draconian races and the reptilian races and the insectoid races found themselves cut off from any protection that might be afforded by the founders, they were in confrontation with a race who wanted to destroy them, who had more power than they did, who had 11 strand templates where they had 10 because they were the guardians of Gate 10. And they had the templates that went with the number of dimensions that they were appointed guardian over the gate for. So there became a huge intergalactic war that still goes on between the Anu Elohim, fallen Anu Elohim, and the fallen Seraphim. Now humans weren't even part of this drama yet, but the founders realized the crisis that was building because they were going to destroy each other, these races, and they were going to destroy everything in their path
they got in between them, and they were going to implode the time matrix at some point. So huge efforts to restore the integrity of Stargate 12 were made, so the founders and the primal light field consciousness could come back in here to begin healing. And finally Stargate 12 was repaired. And when it was repaired, there was a decision made by the 3 Brenau groups. They would create a life form, a new life form, and they would seed it into this time matrix in order to serve as the guardians of the Stargates here, and in order to try to help heal. And
they wanted us there by 9.
Okay.
I promised that people would be sitting down at 9:30.
Okay.
Right? You must be there by 9.
You can come back.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, good.
How will we do that?
I think this is important. I think it's important to bring, if you guys want to hear this, I think this will give you a well-rounded picture of what we represent and what this material represents and the agenda behind it. It's the founders' agenda. The founders, when they finally got Gate 12 repaired, they decided to send themselves in. And it wasn't just the founders that were going to come in. There was a new wave of consciousness that was going to come in from the ascended master fields, or the Janus fields, sound fields. A whole new wave of consciousness was going to come in to try to get order back into this time matrix by healing both of those races that were progressively digressing, and they were ripping each other apart, and they were destroying innocent races, and they were trying to take over the time matrix. So a new race was created, and they were called the Azurites. The Azurites combined the 3 templates of the gold, the amethyst, and the emerald order beings. 3 founders races got together and had their coding put into the Azurite template. The Azurite would be the form that had the ability to span all the way from density 5 all the way down to dimension 1. They could enter any of the densities, and they could be appointed at every Stargate to be the guardians there, the guardians and the healers. They didn't come in to wipe out the races that were in trouble. They came in to try to help them do what's called bioregenesis, where they could regenerate their templates so they could get the clarity of consciousness back, so they could make the decision to return to the fold, which is the oneness. This has been a very long, in terms of linear time, mission. The Azurite races were created, and this was, when were they created? Somewhere around, I'm trying to remember, these dates are all written, in some of the text, but there's so many dates in the text that it's hard to remember all of them. And I usually don't talk about the Azurites too much. It's kind of came out spontaneously then. The Azurites were believed created somewhere around maybe 600 million years ago, something like that. Anyway, I'll put it this way, because I don't want to give a date if I'm not absolutely certain. It was before humans were created, okay? Humans came out of this. Now, humans were created 568 million years ago as a form called the Orphene. Now, they were created into reaction to what happened to the earlier guardian race, the Azurites. The Azurites were caught in a continual battle between the races of the fallen Elohim and the fallen Seraphim. And they were becoming very, very tired. The consciousness that had come in needed to ascend. They needed help. They needed assistance. So there was another plan devised. But there would be another guardian race created that would be stronger even in biology. And it would hold the torch. The torch of this mission would be passed on to this new race. So the beings that had incarnated into time as the Azurites would be able to go back to where they came from to regenerate and kind of have a break already. The new race were called the Orphene. The Orphene race took portions of the Azurite template and combined it with what was called the Anahazi. Now the Anahazi was another name for the Elohai Elohim. So the Orphene template was Elohai Elohim, which was the feline hominid form of the Emerald Order Founders race, combined with that Founders race that had the 3 of them, the 3 of the templates. With the 3 templates in that race, that meant any of the fallen consciousness could eventually evolve into that form to re-evolve into ascension back out of the time matrix. It wasn't a limited form. It contained all of the coding, so there could be any type of race could, if it could get its code straightened out, could eventually reincarnate into that form to evolve back out of time. The human race was created from the Orphene race.
In fact, humans are origin. It's a Lyran-Syrian imprint. The Azarites are most known for their domains within the Syrian star system, Sirius star system, Sirius B, and various other. There was a place called Sirius C that the Anunnaki totally destroyed. That was also a place where the Azarite race existed. The Azarite races have the ability to come into density 1, but they can't live here because their biology is made of too higher frequency matter. And if they stay here, the carbons in the atmosphere, particularly on Earth with its reverse Mercury, they don't last very long physically, biologically, and they could get stuck here. If the body dies here, the consciousness would get stuck here. So they don't come here very often, but they communicate here all the time, and they never abandon the races here. Now what happened and how humans got down to this planet, we started out as Orphine, which were the new guardian race, and there's so much hope put on this new guardian race. The Azarites had tried and tried to resolve what was a growing intergalactic, interuniversal conflict that kept going. It was like a virus that kept spreading, because each of the fallen races would continue to create new races, because they were still creators, they still had the creative potential. And each new race they created had, like themselves, the reversed fire letter sequences of the 10th. So they were creating children simply for the fact of exploiting them, so they could send them into other domains to try to take over. And because these races, the fallen angelics, had severed their ability to connect to D12 or any of the perpetual life and life fields, they became finite. And they knew that they had to feed energy off of other things that had energy, or they would literally fragment and no longer be alive in the form that they knew. They would go back to being space dust. They went on a conquest to find feeding grounds, and that's why they want the time matrix. They move from one to the other because it sustains their individuation separate from source. But they have to feed. It's energy vampire. It's the way they have to live. They couldn't make a choice, and it's not that they're stupid. They have been asked and repeatedly asked, and it's a standing invitation to always re-enter the Emerald Covenant, get your coding back. You will be forgiven, but you will also clean up the messes you've made. Because they have made many, many messes of tortured race forms that have consciousness trapped in all sorts of messes where it can't ascend and is stuck in different dimensional traps. And they continue to create these type of races. Where our big problem came in, humans were created with the Orphine race about 568 million years ago in a counteraction to that. Because now it was a battle for the time matrix. Before, it was just between the Draconian fallen races, or the fallen Seraphim races, and the fallen Anu Elohim. And the Elohim were doing good. The fallen Anu Elohim looked like they would eventually take over the fallen Seraphim races. But all of a sudden, the founders put this new race in here. Now, the race was stronger than the Azarites, or smarter than the Azarites, because the Azarites got tired. They had just been too tired trying to fix this drama. And what the fallen races had hoped, both of them, was that eventually they could kill enough of the Azarites to where they just give up. That didn't happen. When this new race was seeded, called the Orphine, neither of the fallen angelics were happy about it. Oh, great, another bunch of them to deal with, right? They just want to kill each other. Well, the time matrix is basically what they wanted, and the founders were not going to permit that. So when the Orphine were created, the fallen Anu Elohim created another race called the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were created with the purpose, the single purpose of destroying the Orphine race. That was their creator's purpose in creating them. So unfortunately, even the Anunnaki who have gained some level of individuation from their controllers in the fallen angelic matrices, and some have evolved tremendously. They deserve to be rehabilitated, as do many of the Draconian fallen races. But they still have this race supremacist attitude. The intention they were created with was destroy everything in this time matrix that is lesser than what we are. And what we are is superior, and therefore it should be appointed as the god of this time matrix. So they look at humans, they look at draconians, they look at everything else as either there for their exploitation or there to be destroyed because it's lesser than they are. This is a real sickness of consciousness that was genetically imbued into this race, and it's been one of the hardest things to rehabilitate for them as well as for the people trying to help them. There's an arrogance that goes with it. It's like a blind spot, and it's coming to the gene code. And unless they can separate that gene code from the fallen matrix that's pumping that frequency into them, they usually get trapped in it. No matter how far they go, they end up going back into the anti-Christus agenda. So the Anunnaki races were created as the race that was intended to exterminate the Orpheans. As the final, sorry founders, you're not taking this place. And then as soon as they were gone, they're going to get the Drax. This created a three-way struggle in this time matrix that has been going on ever since that point. Now there are races created from the Orphean, several of them. One of them were put on Tara. The Orphean originally could go on density-free. They were on density-free Gaia and several other planets in density-free. They were put on density-2 Tara and several other planets in density-2. And the Orphean then combined with one of the older races, the Azarites, and they created a race of special guardians that were going to be appointed as the strong guardian team for Stargate 6, because that Stargate wasn't compromised yet, and it was a target for the Anu Elohim. Well, that race became the Maharaji. They're the blue humans. And they're still a race that is on density 2 Sirius B that has been almost like our mothers here, because they have never ever given up. And the Magi races, the Grailon races that have come through into human form here, always pass through Gate 6 to get here, so they don't get hung up in the distortions that are a part of Gate 5 and Gate 4 in coming in. The Maharaji have been one of the best, closest supporters of the Christos agenda on this planet. And there are versions of them, like races of them, in the inner Earth as well, and associated with parallel Earth. If we, I'll leave it with this. If we end up with things going well, at some point, they will be our reading committee, and they will come in, as they used to do in the ancient times in India. The stories of the blue people, they were real. So we'll pick up there when we come back. I promise I'll try not to keep you here till midnight. I mean, anybody's free to leave, but not like, Elizabeth here.
And what's really sad about the Anunnaki race is they were created as simply a tool to be used for destruction. The people that ended up as Anunnaki people, after a while, they have carried a burden, a horrid burden of being created for the purpose of harm, being created without a knowing of what it means to feel the oneness. It isn't that they made a choice, not once they were here in bodies as individuals. They're controlled by a matrix that made a choice. Now the Anunnaki have, because they were created to be, become the adversaries, that they chose to be the adversaries of the angelic human races who are here to protect the stargates. There are many, many layers to this adversarial battle. And in the meantime, you also have the fallen seraphim matrices, who have their draconian, their reptilian, their insectoid, and some of their avian races that also made the same choices. They were against the angelic humans because they wanted dominion of the time matrix. Both of these races need help. And that's what the founders have always been trying to do, and that's part of what the human mission was about. We were supposed to be the ones that were strong enough, wise enough, loving enough to stand up to them so they didn't destroy us, and to become the ones that they could come to for healing, which meant we had to have a capacity to love tremendously, because the very races that would seek to rip us apart and destroy us and annihilate us were the very races who needed our assistance most. So it would be our test and our challenge of our ability to hold unconditional love, which is a state of perfect vibrational harmonization, where we don't lose sight of the oneness, that we could still, no matter what was thrown at us, not just turn the other cheek and let the other one get smacked, be able to be strong enough and say, excuse me, no, you're not going to do that. Just like if you were in a nursery and there were a group of nice children and a group of children that had some real problems, that were violent and angry and hurting other children. You say, excuse me, you're not going to do that anymore. And you would try to help the children that were out of control, because you loved them equally, because it wasn't the children that were bad. It was the behaviors they exhibited. And there were reasons why those behaviors came about. And the core reason was a distortion in their core template. And any more than we would hold against at this point in our evolution on Earth, the concept of a person who is born in a way that we call, I don't know what the socially correct term is these days. They used to call them retarded people,
or people that were slower because they had certain parts of the brain that weren't functioning right. We wouldn't judge a person in that condition as in the same way as a person who had full control of their facilities, like we knew they were absolutely genius and they were perfectly functional in every aspect of their life. There's a difference in motive. A person who has distortions in their genetics or in their templates that creates a type of consciousness that's out of control sometimes and does horrible things sometimes is very different than a being who has full control of its facilities and chooses to inflict harm because it likes to. Even a being that appears to be in full control of its facilities and chooses to inflict harm because it likes to, this is showing you something. It's showing you a distortion that's equal to being retarded. Because when you recognize that you're part of Source, and you're a face of Source and part of the One, no matter what your level of defect or advantage is, you would not take joy or take absolute privilege in exploiting or harming other things. Now, the Anunnaki races don't have that level of differentiation because they need assistance. The Draconian races are very much the same. There's actually a difference between the consciousness of a Draconian and an Anunnaki. Neither of them have the ability to feel unconditional love or much love. They use love in a way to draw energy from other people because they don't know any better. They don't know how to connect in a way of understanding or empathy. The Draconian races, wherever they manifest, in whatever form they manifest, tend to be what appears to be a little slow mentally compared to humans or compared to Anunnaki. There's certain things they just don't get. Like they'll put yourself in your face and they'll inflict yourself, they'll like violate your space and not even realize they're doing it. And you kind of like call them on it and they go, huh? I did something wrong? I did. They'll also, when they want to enforce their will, they will do it by brute force. They'll simply come in and terrorize you and step on you. Anunnaki are a little more shrewd. They have 11 strand capacity reverse, not 10. They're the sly ones. They realize that you can get more, what's the saying, you can get more flies with sugar than you can with vinegar. And they'll kiss up to you. They'll be your best buddy and best friend. And they'll twist your mind in knots while they're sucking your energy. Both of these races have a lot of problems. Now, the problems were trying to be solved ever since these races were created. These problems were created before these races were created. It started with the Elohim Wars 250 billion years ago, when Stargate 12 was blown up. This is when the mess really started. Humans were created as part of the healing mission, and we took on a big burden when we did it. We came in as ascended masters who were willing to put ourselves right in the middle of the battlefield, and knowing that we might lose ourselves in the process because we had a lot of odds stacked against us. But we also knew we had the power of love, the ability to create vibrational harmonization all the way up the spectrum. So we knew when we came in, despite who won the little battles here and there, eventually we'd win the war. And winning that war would be turning it into where there was no war, because everybody recognized they were part of the same family and started to act in love again. That's the objective and the purpose humans were created for. We all carry that imprint with us. And what's interesting is there were several attempts to assist the fallen races. And in their evolution, in their individuation from the fallen Anu Elohim and fallen Seraphim matrices of density 4, some of the Draconian and some of the Anunnaki races had what was almost close to free will, not quite. They were still controlled like puppets on a string by their controlling matrices. But they developed attributes where they began to see themselves as separate. And some of them made choices to enter the Emerald Covenant. Well, because the fallen matrices are very dependent on not losing any of their energy units, because they look at them as expendable life forms, but absolutely essential energy essence that they need. If they have all of their people, once they put them in Anunnaki form, going and joining the Emerald Covenant, they're going to lose all of the energy quantity that they need to sustain themselves perpetually in this time matrix. So when the Anunnaki and the Draconian races, portions of them, that would make agreements with the founders that they wanted to get their ability to become a Christed race back, they wanted out of the game. They didn't want to play anymore. they became major targets to the races to the matrices that they had incarnated out of. Over and over, there have been what we call bioregenesis programs, where attempts were made to combine the Anunnaki or the Draconian, or both, with beings or races that held the Christos imprint, which means they had the 12-strand pattern. Humans were the primary race in this matrix that held the 12-strand pattern. So there were hybridization programs done. Now, hybridization is interesting. It's a very specific process of combining DNA templates, first of all. And there were several layers of this done in different seedings. The humans on Earth were seeded here about 250 million years ago on parallel Earth. About 25 million years ago, they were seeded on this Earth. There have been 3 seedings of humans here. This is the 3rd seeding, because the first 2 were destroyed by Anunnaki races and Draconian races, who at various times came in either to fight with each other or to get rid of us, because of the halls of Amenti stargates and the crystal pylon temples that I talked about before, because they are major tools in getting control of this time matrix. Now, we're in the 3rd seeding of the angelic human race here. That seeding began in 798,000 BC. Since that time, there has been, much later, there has been a bioregenesis program that was established here to assist the Anunnaki and Draconian races. It began, I believe, well, actually, it began with an invasion that created a species that had some potential for evolving into a bioregenesis race for the Anunnaki. The thing we call Neanderthal was not a human form. It was a form that was created by the Anunnaki races from the Pleiades, from Alcyon. They're called the Samjazi Anunnaki, and some of the nibiruian Anunnaki. They came to Earth to invade, and they needed a slave labor race. They needed a race to harvest gold from gold mines that were dug in ancient times in the regions of Africa, because they needed gold for their planet Nibiru. It was an element that they used alchemically in certain ways to fortify their atmosphere in a way that would allow them very long lifespans. So they came here to harvest gold because they depleted their own. And they created a race by taking some of the genetic material from primate races that were on this planet, some of the primate races from their planet, and their own gene code, which they felt would give them a bit of intelligence that would allow them to follow orders and instructions. The Neanderthal was an it was an ape, but it was upgraded to have a consciousness more similar to the Anunnaki, but it was still a puppet creation, and it was horribly abused by the Anunnaki who created it. They were beaten, they were killed easily, they were used for everything you can imagine. They were treated horridly. After this period, there were certain Anunnaki groups from Nibiru and from the Pleiades and from other regions, like Sirius B and Alpha Omega, or the Alpha and Omega systems in the star systems in density 2. They decided to enter the Emerald Covenant, and there was an agreement made that this poor race of creatures is what the Anunnaki looked at them as. They called them things. They're beings, and they called them things, expendable resources. The founders wanted to intervene and assist those things because they had potential to evolve and to get free from the horrible torture that they were living. The Neanderthal race, it was created about 250,000 BC. From that period of time, there was a whole bunch of political things that happened that if I start explaining, we'll be here till next week. Some of it will be in the book. Some of it is on, we have a capsulized timeline. The Neanderthal race was used to create several stages of genetic upgrade. The first several stages were done with genetic engineering because you couldn't take a Neanderthal and crossbreed it through natural coupling with a human because they were not compatible genetically. You wouldn't conceive 99% of the time, and if you did, it would abort. So you couldn't make a hybrid strain that way. What was done instead was there were several upgrades made where the Neanderthal DNA template was progressively combined with the DNA templates characteristic of the humans in a type of hybridization called template braiding, where you'd have the template that you were trying to advance
And then you would take the Keelan codes, or the fire letters, first of one strand of the upgrading template, the human template. So there were several stages of upgrade that were made to the Neanderthal. The first stage, I believe, was in 155,000 BC, and they became a race called the Iluli. The Iluli, stage 1, were called the Iluli Levi. The Iluli Levi opened up a whole new opportunity for Anunnaki evolution, for Neanderthal evolution, but also for invasion. Because the Iluli Levi were the first strain of Anunnaki that could directly interbreed with the seeding 3 races of humans. They had the ability to sexually interbreed and create a living life form that wouldn't abort. There was all sorts of invasions attempted because this gave the fallen angelic races an opportunity. If they could get their consciousness incarnated into these forms, they would be able to progressively infiltrate the human race lines, make generations that would pick up the codes to the stargates here. So progressively, they would gain the keys to Earth's Templar so they could take it over. There were several stages, and it's interesting, when you see the names of the stages of the Iluli evolution, they went from Iluli Levi to Iluli Judah to Iluli Nephi. These are the names of the tribes given as human tribes in the Bible. They are not human tribes. They are the hybrid tribes where we tried to do bioregenesis of the Anunnaki races who wanted to enter the Emerald Covenant, using the race that had been abused in order to save that race, the Neanderthal. There's so little of the genetic template of the Neanderthal left in this race strain that you couldn't even tell in Iluli stage 4 from the Neanderthal, because it was progressively reversing and putting back in the right order the templates that were so distorted in the Neanderthal being. This became a real problem once it hit stage 5, where the race became what was called Homo sapien 1. Humans are not Homo sapiens. Homo sapien is an ape-based genetic ascendancy. It's an Anunnaki-based genetic ascendancy. Right now, we all appear as if we are Homo sapien. What we're known as is Homo sapien 2, an unintended mutation of combining the two in an artificial way called genetic cloaking. An artificial way where you can, by distorting the planetary grids, take two races that are very different and look very different, and if you put their DNA under a microscope, they would be very different. Taking these two races, and where there was similarity in the templates, which of course there would be, because by the time we were at stage 5 of the bioregenesis program for the Anunnaki races, they had received strand 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the human template. They didn't have 12-strand capacity, but they had enough to create ascension to density 2, which was what we were trying to do for them. Get them to be able to build up, get out of density 1 where they were stuck, get back into density 2 where they could continue the bioregenesis program. These races of the bioregenesis program were targeted by the fallen angelic matrices because the consciousness that was incarnating into them was doing mutiny against the fallen angelic races, and it was saying, we want to get back into the Christos light. And they were hated and despised by the matrices who they had originally incarnated out of. They were also a very big opportunity to take over Earth's grids. And Earth has always been a valuable target because of the halls of Amende stargates and because of inner Earth and the crystal pylon temples. What was done through an amazing process compared to our scientific understanding, an amazing process of jamming the frequencies in the planetary grids, knowing that the frequencies in the planetary grids controlled the frequencies that would run through the DNA template, which controlled what chemicals would manifest in the physical DNA. There was something called genetic cloaking done, where the areas, strands 1, 2, and 3, where humans and the hybrids could look similar, except humans did not have reversals or fire letter reversals, Keelan reversals in their templates, and the hybrids did, where they could be tricked into looking the same and to functioning the same and to creating a biology that appeared to be the same, where two races could literally have portions of their DNA templates altered in a way by frequency held on the planet that would create a situation where a third race came out of them, or they mutated into a third race that was neither of their genetic identities, and that kept both of them trapped in time. That's what has happened here. Now, how this was done, this genetic cloaking, it's also called transposition of race identity, where you take two very different genetic templates on a planet that has certain frequencies flowing through it that allows for that diversification. You shut off 2/3 of those frequencies. You leave only 2/3 of the remaining templates, the parts that contain the similarity. And then you put all of those parts into reversal, where once upon a time there was a race that had 12-strand DNA templates and all the chemicals that went with them that were not in reversal, and you had a race that had 5 strands that were corrected, along with 11 strands reversed. All of a sudden everybody looks like a much lower strand content with everything reversed. This is what we're calling the normal human genome. Humans went from being what was considered a base 12 genetic alphabet. This gets into nucleotide base pairs that the chemical DNA is manufactured on. We were base 12. Anunnaki forms that would visit were base 11 reverse. The ones of the hybrid form were partially base reverse, partially base going the right way, and they had no more than a base 8 capacity, which means there'd be 8 chemicals manifesting to form the DNA chains, the ladders, and the ladder rungs in the DNA chains. By blocking out the frequencies that control the templates upon which those chemicals come into manifestation, we were all reduced to a similar base 4 reverse genetic template that they call the human genome. It's not the human genome, and it's not the Anunnaki hybrid genome. The Anunnaki form was interesting. The way it was used was because certain Anunnaki races had already combined with draconian races. If you combine those, draconian souls can incarnate into this hybrid form. So you could have draconians in the Emerald Covenant using the Anunnaki bioregenesis program, as well as Anunnaki. Humans didn't incarnate into that form. They didn't need to. They had their own form. The human form was used to assist in helping the evolution. This is where a whole bunch of nonsense about we came out of apes. No, we didn't. But there has been an intentional transposition of race identity gone down here, and it was done on purpose. This began in earnest in 25,500 BC when they put the reversal in the Merkaba of Earth's grids. This is what started to block the frequency. This mutation is called the checkerboard mutation, because what it did is take our natural DNA templates, and if you look at them as light bulbs, and you look at each strand, each double helix strand, as having the original templates for 12 full chromosomes, they took those templates, if you see 12 little ovals representing one double helix strand, what they did with each of those little ovals was turn them into a checkerboard, turn them half on, half off, half reversed. They were a mess. What we're seeing now as the common human genome is actually fragments of the natural chromosome content and gene content. If these things were turned back on, when these grids become released, people are going to start to change. Not overnight, or we'd have like an absolute, we'd be walking a really strange sci-fi movie, because everybody starts to morph before your eyes. And we find out who's an Anunnaki soul and who's a draconian soul. Because draconian and Anunnaki bodies look different than human bodies. Human bodies were stunted. They used to be anywhere from 7 to 12 feet tall. They had a 5,000-year or more lifespan. Their breathing rate was about 2/3 as slow, and their heart rate was about 2/3 as slow as what's happening with these bodies that are the Homo sapien 2 mutations. The Anunnaki bodies, the ones with the hybridization program, they were also quite a bit taller than what this race is right now, because they were stunted as well, except they had more heavy features. They had more characteristics that were similar to primates, because they were a primate-based genetic code. What is taking place right now from this experiment of intentional takeover that was begun in 25,500 BC is we've culminated to a point where the Anunnaki are intending to come in after they instigate war here. They're going to come in and pretend that they're our saviors, that they're going to stop their children from harming themselves any further. They're going to feed us a lie of history, which is already in the books that are being channeled by Anunnaki channels. And what they want to do is, if they can get to that point of the Khan, they want to use science, who they've very carefully cultivated here, to prove that we are their children, because our genome will look like theirs. We get into the Human Genome Project that's being run right now. This is all part of something called the Luciferian Covenant. It was a covenant that was agreed upon, not in 25,500 BC. All this stuff took a while for all these groups to get together and decide, yeah, we'll do like a co-takeover thing. There was something called the Atlantean conspiracy that developed after 25,500 BC, when the Guardian groups came in and created a new type of Magi race that was stronger and had more physical fortitude for the density 1 system that could stand a reverse Merkaba. These were the Eoni. They took the Azarites, they took the Oraphim, and they combined them with some of the inner Earth races to create a form strong enough that they could carry the Magi lines and the Stargate codes without dying easily in the densities that were going to build up here because of this reversal. In 22,326 BC, our races were massacred, because this is when Thoth, who had been responsible for the draconian Anunnaki side of the bioregenesis program, he was appointed in 155,000 BC to be the guardian, because he was of the Emerald Covenant at that point. He was an Anunnaki who had stayed loyal to the Emerald Covenant for many thousands of years. He had regenerated many of his strands. He was appointed as the guardian of the races that would have draconian and Anunnaki souls. When he violated the Emerald Covenant and decided to run the Nibiruian takeover agenda, our races were decimated because we had trusted him. That was called the Great Deception, 22,326 BC. That's when the Emerald Tablets came to be. They were Thoth's, they were the manifestation of Thoth's defection, because they were the tablets that were given to the corrupted hybrids that were running the Atlantean temples as torture temples, so they could use the Templar mechanics to decimate the Magi races that were coming in to reset the Christos grid. It got worse after that. At this point, we weren't as mutated as we were then. We still had lifespans that lasted about 800 years. We were shorter than we had originally been. By then we were mutating to shorter forms, and you couldn't tell by looking at the faces anymore what was an Anunnaki hybrid and what was a human, because they were becoming the same mutated race because of the grids being blocked. In 10,500 BC, oh, by the way, the event of 25,500 BC was called the Luciferian Rebellion. Luciferian referred to one of the family lines of the Marduk Luciferian Anunnaki from Nibiru and Alpha Centauri. These were the ones that initiated the mess. But the mess got taken over by several other groups in the meantime. Now, by the time 10,500 BC rolled around, Atlantis was falling apart. Atlantis had been a continent originally, and I showed you the maps the other day where it existed. It kind of looked like a turtle profile with its little flippers sticking down and its little tail and its little head. This was the head of the turtle, and it's kind of funny, the island of Ai was like the eye of the turtle. Up here it was called Lohas Atlantis. The middle section that is now primarily underwater in the Atlantic was called Nohasa, and Brua was the name of the area down in the Florida region. Because of the fighting that was taking place between the hybrid races that had been infiltrated by the fallen angelics and the ones who had stayed loyal to the Emerald Covenant and the angelic humans, in 50,000 BC, certain events took place where the grids, they attempted to use the Templar mechanics to destroy the human races and the Emerald Covenant races so the hybrid races could take over in the name of the fallen angelics. But it didn't work, and it backfired. And they severed the continent of Atlantis because they ran a pulse of frequency from Brua, which was where Gate 2 is. Gate 2 is the Gruwal point. the control point for the planetary shields that holds the most impact and the most energy. They used that point, which is off the coast of Sarasota, Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico. They used that to send a pulse through the grids over to Giza, Egypt. Now, Giza, Egypt is where Stargate 4 is. They're attempting to get what's the real Ark of the Covenant. The real Ark of the Covenant is a portal passage that goes from here to D9 Andromeda. It's where the third seeding of the human race had come down, where we had come in to incarnation originally in seeding 3. If they could get control of the portal, Ark of the Covenant, they would be able to get control of Amente. Well, it backfired. And what happened was the pulse that they'd sent from Brewer Atlantis, or Florida, over to Giza, Egypt, following the ley lines, backfired because there was a seal on the Ark of the Covenant that it couldn't penetrate. So it backlogged, amplified as it went in the chaotic frequency, and spread up and down throughout the grids between the two places. And it shattered the heck out of the Atlantean continent. What that did was create major tectonic cracking. I was in that period because I remember standing in a place and there was certain signals that were put out. They were like air raid sirens, but you didn't hear them on the outside. We could hear telepathically, so they were like silent wave patterns. They were used for when tides would come up unexpectedly. Well, boy, were the tides coming up. I remember looking over my shoulder, running from one of the footbridges, because we had these miles of footbridges that connected different places in Atlantis. And I could see the land behind me turning to liquid. It was an amazing feeling, just watching this vibration move through the land where the land looked like liquid. Most of Atlantis went down. The middle part, Nohasa, went down. During this period, this is where the Noah story was born. During this period, there was another group of the Anunnaki Bioregenesis Program people that only had the souls of Jehovian Anunnaki. They were directly of the Anu Elohim. They had no draconian connections. They were from the Anunnaki of Sirius B, the bipedal dolphin people. They had their souls in them. They were appointed, when the Anunnaki Bioregenesis Program began, under the directorship of Enoch, who had been one of them, who had evolved to a human form, and he was appointed as their guardian. Enoch had found out that the crash was coming, and he had brought portions of his people into protection, because Enoch was at this point still Emerald Covenant. So he had tried to protect his races from the Nibiruan Anunnaki onslaught. So this is how Atlantis became a set of islands, which it did, just like before that, which I won't even go into because this is more important to what we need to get to today. Before that, Lemuria went down, the big continent in the Pacific, through a very similar set of circumstances, except this time, the ones that were the Jehovian hybrids that were not Emerald Covenant tried to blow things up and take control. And they ended up with a situation where they ended up tearing apart the grids of the Pacific continent, where Q-Site 12 was. That's what they were trying to destroy. They did a darn good job doing it, because they blew it up into where it's only several island chains now. When it got back to Atlantis, after the Luciferian Covenant, after the Great Deception of 22,326 BC, it came down to 10,500 BC. Now, the Guardian races and the races of the Emerald Covenant here had tried to keep the peace and tried to keep the stability and tried not to let the place fall under full, fallen angelic control. In 10,500 BC, there was another uprising of the Luciferian races. It was called the Luciferian Conquest. And there were all sorts of other nasty things done. Already, the Atlantean continent was 3 islands, or what was left. It was they were like sort of like 3 islands. One was connected to the mainland. We call it the United States now. The tip of Florida, there was actually a land bridge that connected it to the lands that are below it now. That wasn't all islands there. That area was still called Brua. It was actually called Alta Brua and they used Alta and with the name in the middle to represent the after the fact, after the cataclysm. And it meant places of light with that name. All right? The Bahamas, what we call the Bahama Islands now, were what remained of Nohasa. and England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales were what remained of Lohas, Atlantis. But the conflict didn't stop there. There were still the hybrid races that were being controlled by the fallen angelics, and the hybrid races that were trying to escape the matrices of the fallen angelics. And the angelic human 12 tribes, there were 12 tribes of angelic humans that were attempting to keep things stable here. We are already mutated by the 25,500 BC mess with the reverse Merkaba. There was a series of events that took place